Chapter 1192. Chu Luo and the others' identities were exposed by Shi Sheng. As a general, Dan Ming quickly arranged accommodations for them. Of course, during this period, Chu Luo was often ridiculed by Dan Ming. Perhaps it was because there was a saying that when one was under someone else's roof, one had to lower one's head. Or perhaps Chu Luo had other motives, but she didn't clash with Dan Ming head-on. She only mocked him indirectly. The battle between the two sides was silent. Shi Sheng followed behind them without saying a word. He followed them like a ghost. Lu Ziyan felt uncomfortable, but she couldn't say anything in front of people from other countries. Then rest well, Prince Luo. I'll tell His Majesty tomorrow that the Northern Liang envoys have arrived. After mocking them, Dan Ming was in a good mood and didn't make things difficult for them. He left the post house and saw Shi Sheng standing at the door. He immediately rushed up and asked strangely, "Why are you so black-hearted? Are you still Northern Liang's Prince Rong after exposing their identities?" In the past, Dan Ming was a little silly and sweet, but ever since the emperor changed, he had been hovering around beheading people every day. If he hadn't been smarter, he would have been beheaded long ago. They make me uncomfortable, so of course I have to make them uncomfortable. She didn't want to do anything to them at first, but that little B***tch, Mr. Plot, kept pushing them to her. Dan Ming. He had better send this lady away quickly. Shi Sheng looked at Dan Ming. "Tell me, Sima. What happened to my grandfather?" Shi Sheng learned the whole story from Dan Ming. When Dan Ming's grandfather and Lord Sima were in middle school, they had once roamed the pugilistic world together, and tried to dominate the pugilistic world. Of course, they didn't succeed in the end, but the two of them had a life-and-death relationship. When Lord Sima realized that the emperor was making a move against the Sima family, he started to contact Dan Ming's grandfather. No matter what happened between him and the emperor, he hoped to protect Prince Rong. It was Dan Ming's grandfather who had asked Shi Sheng to go to Qi Yao. He had done this secretly, and Qi Yuan didn't know about it. Later on, when he found out that the matter had been decided, Qi Yuan almost killed him, but he was stopped by the other courtiers. It was strange. Qi Yuan was very angry back then. When he was angry, no one's words were effective. However, that time he didn't really drag him out and beheaded him. Originally, Shi Sheng would have been taken away when they left Red Planet's borders to create the illusion that she was dead, and then she would live on as a woman. If nothing happened to the Sima clan, she would be brought back. If something happened, the things that Master Sima had prepared for her would be enough for her to live a peaceful life. The plan was good, but Shi Sheng didn't follow the script. In fact, it had gone completely awry. What happened later was even more chaotic, leading to the current situation. Shi Sheng thought for a while. In the plot, the contact between Master Sima and Dan Ming's grandfather became evidence of his treason. So he was really wronged? With the main character as the main character, the others would either skim over it or be completely annihilated. Who would go and describe the supporting characters in such detail? Therefore, in places where the protagonist's perspective could not reach, who knew if the person you thought was a bad guy was really a bad guy? Are the good people you think they are really good people? Great Aunt, if you don't leave this place, grandfather and I will be buried with you. Are Lord Sima's men still with you? Hurry and leave with them. Dan Ming begged with his eyes. His Majesty already didn't like the Dan family. If he was given another chance, His Majesty would definitely kill them without mercy. Why didn't he like them? Dan Ming didn't know either. Anyway, His Majesty didn't like many people. No, he didn't like anyone. If he didn't like them, he would kill them. Who asked him to be the emperor? Shi Sheng pondered for a moment. I'll snatch someone and leave. Who cared if he was a good person or not? He would just take him back and observe him. Dan Ming was stunned. Who are you going to snatch? The entire imperial city was in a mess because of you. And you still want to snatch someone? Why did he have a bad feeling about this? Shi Sheng's eyes curved and he left with an unfathomable expression. Dan Ming. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but why did he suddenly feel cold? Before leaving, he had to do something for the male and female leads to leave a memento. Shi Sheng threatened the system, and got a detailed part of the plot. According to the plot, Lu Ziyan came to Qi Yao this time to find someone. That person had a medicine that could cure the male lead. That's right, the male lead was sick, and only the female lead could cure him. That was the plan. Shi Sheng had the plot, so it wasn't difficult to find the person. But the other party had a strange temper. He said that the medicine was only for the fated person, and she wasn't the fated person. This person was specially prepared for the female lead. Of course, she wasn't the fated person. It didn't matter if she wasn't the fated person. They could use violence. Shi Sheng destroyed half of his storage. He was really heartbroken, so he handed the medicine to her with trepidation. To deal with this kind of person, they had to go for the things that he cared about. Shi Sheng destroyed the medicine after getting it. The plot said that there was only one stock of this thing, but it was the most important medicine. Without it, the male lead would never be able to recover. The plot, that little b****, better not create a substitute for her. Thinking about it, it was possible. After all, the male and female lead couldn't die so quickly. Shi Sheng returned. The person was tidying up the house. When he saw her, he was so frightened that he fell into a pile of herbs. What else do you want? Shi Sheng stepped on the overturned stool and put his hands on his knees. He looked like a bandit. Let me ask you, what are the antidotes for the 7-star passionless poison? 7-star passionless poison? The person's face turned pale. Wasn't this thing extinct a long time ago? Why was she asking about this? Although the thing that Shi Sheng took away was a medicine, it had other uses and was very precious. Many people wanted it, so he didn't think that it was the 7-star passionless poison. But now, you don't know? Huh. Shi Sheng's expression was fierce. The originally good-looking young man suddenly became fierce. His eyes were filled with a murderous glint. It was scary to look at. He thought about what happened before and quickly said, You, the thing that you destroyed was the medicine. I know. What I am asking is there any other way? It's gone. This person was very puzzled. If he was afflicted with the 7 stars of ruthlessness, why would he destroy the catalyst? What was the meaning of destroying the catalyst, and then asking if there was any other way? Really? Shi Sheng narrowed his eyes. The cold gleam of the iron sword flashed in his eyes, and a chill spread throughout his body. He stuttered. There seems to be another way. Speak. You should have heard of young Master Clear Dust's name? He can cure the 7-star passionless poison. As for how to cure it, I don't know. I really don't know. This is what I heard from my master. He said that the cultivation technique of young Master Jingqin's sect is very special. It can cure the 7-star passionless poison. Pure dust. The second male lead had a tragic ending? Fuck. Did she have to kill the second male lead first? Why is it that the host's first thought is always to kill, and not other gentle methods? What should I do if my host explodes the shed? Waiting online, very urgent ##, today's Phoenix would flavored ticket #everyone, have a good weekend. Vote for the monthly votes. 4,000 plus chapters. 4,000 plus chapters. 4,000, 4,000, 4,000, 4,000. Go Pikachu. Something seems wrong. Go Cherub. Chapter 1193. Your Majesty, the Luo King is already here. Do we still need to make a move? Qi Yuan's expression was cold, his tone icy. What's the point of keeping you all? The people below trembled. Were they just there to be cut down? Your Majesty, the Luo King is still a king with a different surname. He has a lot of support in Beiliang. If we rashly attack him, it won't do us any good. Prime Minister Su tried to persuade him as usual. Qi Yuan didn't want to listen. He waved his hand. Get out. Prime Minister Su and the others looked at each other. Their Majesty was hard to please. Qi Yuan sat on the dragon throne, staring at the ground with a gloomy expression. A pair of boots suddenly appeared in his line of sight. He frowned. I told you to get out. Don't you understand? Oh, Your Majesty, you dare to tell this prince to get out? Shi Sheng snorted. If you want this prince to get out, Your Majesty needs to have the ability to do so. This was what Qi Yuan had said before. Although the words were different, the meaning was the same. Qi Yuan's gaze shifted to Shi Sheng's face. He frowned. What are you doing here again? This man was baffling. He didn't know what he wanted to do. He didn't feel any malice towards him, but he also didn't feel any kindness. He kept all his emotions in check. What he showed was only what he wanted you to see. Qi Yuan felt an inexplicable sense of danger. But there was also an indescribable feeling in the depths of his heart. It was like an adventurer who knew that the other side was a cliff, but still wanted to go there. Shisheng tilted his head, his smile widening. I'm here to take you away. Qi Yuan stared at him expressionlessly for a few seconds, then suddenly opened his mouth. Men, Shisheng interrupted him. Scream all you want. No one will come to save you even if you scream yourself hoarse. Coming from Shisheng's mouth, there was no sense of dissonance at all when she said this. Qi Yuan remembered what happened in his own palace. He quickly gave up the urge to call for people to chop her up. He asked, Prince Rong came to Qi Yao for us? It was strange for a man to come for her. Shisheng's expression was arrogant. Otherwise, what do you think Qi Yao has that is worth this prince's visit? Qi Yuan paused for a moment before slowly saying, 10,000 miles of mountains and rivers. Shisheng sneered. Do you think Qi Yao is a mountain of gold and silver? Do I have nothing better to do? Her eyes were too calm. There was no pursuit of power or greed for money. She was arrogant, but she did not look down on others. She only looked at the world with a calm indifference. At such a young age, it was as if he had experienced the vicissitudes of life and seen through everything. What a strange person. Qi Yuan calmed himself down. Prince Rong, don't you think your actions are strange? Where? Why are you taking me away? I've taken a fancy to you. What else could it be? Prince Rong has taken a fancy to a man. What's the problem? Is there a rule that says you can't fall for a man? Qi Yuan. Yin and yang were polar opposites. Since ancient times, men and women had been assigned to each other. How could anyone fall in love with a man? This prince doesn't want to talk nonsense with you. Are you coming with me, or do you want me to do it myself? Shisheng waved his hand impatiently. This prince won't go easy on you. If you don't want to suffer, then come with me obediently. Qi Yuan raised his voice. I am the ruler of a country. How can I leave with you? Shisheng couldn't help but roll his eyes. Stop wasting time. Just snatch it back. She walked towards Qi Yuan. Qi Yuan didn't have martial arts and couldn't call for help. When he saw her approach, his expression changed. Shisheng slammed his palm on the table and glared fiercely. You want this 10,000 miles of mountains and rivers? No problem. This prince will give it to you with both hands in the future. But for now you have to listen to me. You, Shisheng's eyebrows curved as he raised his hand to hit Qi Yuan. Qi Yuan dodged, but Shisheng pulled him over and chopped his neck. In the end, Qi Yuan only saw her smiling face that seemed to harbor evil intentions. At night, the people outside realized that Qi Yuan hadn't come out yet. They were a little nervous, but afraid that something might have happened. They still went in to take a look. They found that there was no one inside. The emperor was missing. This matter spread quickly. Prime Minister Su and Dan Ming rushed to the palace immediately. Prime Minister Su asked the eunuchs kneeling in a row, Have you searched everywhere in the palace? We've searched everywhere. There's no trace of His Majesty. The eunuchs wanted to cry but had no tears. Prime Minister Su didn't know if it was out of anger or something else. The usually gentle Prime Minister was actually angry. Didn't His Majesty notice that you were guarding outside the door? The eunuchs didn't dare to speak. Prime Minister Su rubbed his forehead. His Majesty wasn't wrong to want to behead all of you. Dan Ming came out with a letter and handed it to Prime Minister Su. Prince Rong took it away. Prime Minister Su looked at Dan Ming strangely, then his gaze fell on the letter. I borrowed it for His Majesty's use. When I return it depends on my mood. If you want to rebel, hurry up. Who knows when I'll bring him back? Don't worry, I won't do anything to him. I'll provide him with good food and drink. Prince Rong. Dan Ming was also speechless. She said she wanted to kidnap someone before leaving. Who knew that the person she wanted to kidnap was their emperor? Her guts were simply out of this world. Prime Minister Su read the letter over and over again 3 times. His eyes darkened as he shouted angrily, Send someone after her. When Qi Yuan woke up, He found himself in a carriage. He sat up and rubbed his neck, looking around with a sullen expression. There was no one. He was still wearing his imperial robe, and was covered with a thick quilt. It was very warm. Did he really bring him out? Qi Yuan couldn't tell if he was angry or surprised. There were so many people in the palace. How was he brought out? Were those people all useless? No, I'll kill them when I get back. Qi Yuan lifted the curtain beside him and looked outside. The carriage stopped in the middle of a forest. It was bare and devoid of any greenery. It was winter. How long had he been unconscious for? The cold wind hit the carriage and blew on his face. It was bone-chilling. You're awake? A face suddenly popped up beside him, inches away from him. He could clearly see the long eyelashes and jade-like skin. A delicate fragrance was carried over by the cold wind, refreshing his heart. The young man was really good-looking. He was like the bright moon in the dark night, shining brightly with a cold haze. He was unattainable. Qi Yuan abruptly shrank back, putting some distance between him and Shisheng. He glared at him with an ugly expression. Shisheng walked to the front and jumped into the carriage. Are you hungry? Qi Yuan didn't want to talk to his kidnapper, so he responded with a cold gaze. Shisheng didn't care. He put the thing that was still steaming in his hand aside. We're already out of the border, so you'd better not think about running away. Even if you do, this prince can still catch you. He paused, then raised his head and smiled. We're in the middle of nowhere. You don't have the time. This prince doesn't recommend you run. Qi Yuan took a deep breath, but all he inhaled was cold air. It chilled him from the throat to the tip of his heart. Chapter 1194. Qi Yuan pushed Shisheng aside and got off the carriage. He thought that the person behind him would pull him, but she didn't. She just sat outside the carriage and watched him leave. It was really cold outside and he wasn't wearing thick clothes. The cold wind drilled into his neck, and his body turned cold in the blink of an eye. The distance between them grew further and further. Qi Yuan didn't know how long he had been walking. His whole body was frozen, but there was no one around and he didn't know where he was. Your Majesty. A figure suddenly appeared beside him and said respectfully, His Highness said that if you are tired, you can go back at any time. In his dreams, no matter what his motive was, he wasn't going back. He was going to go back and send troops to destroy northern Liang. That person didn't say much and disappeared. Qi Yuan looked in the direction he disappeared. There was a cloak and some food on the ground. Qi Yuan's expression was ugly. He didn't touch those things and continued walking. The shadow guards behind Qi Yuan were dumbfounded. Ever since they followed His Highness, they had opened the door to a new world. Shadow Guard A asked, Why do you think His Highness kidnapped the Qi Yao Emperor? This was the Emperor of the Crimson Glory Empire. His Highness had tied him up just like that, and even brought him back to northern Liang. Capture the leader first? Shadow Guard B guessed. If he kidnapped the Qi Yao Emperor first, Qi Yao would be in chaos and wouldn't have time to torment northern Liang. And His Highness was really smart. Shadow Guard A retorted, His Highness didn't treat him like a captive. Shadow Guard B was stunned. Then what does His Highness want to do? Shadow Guard A shook his head. How would he know what His Highness was thinking? Anyway, they had been very confused recently and couldn't figure it out. They didn't want to think about it, and focused on following the person in front. And why did he stop? Should we go up and take a look? The two shadow guards hesitated but didn't go up. Qi Yuan only stopped for a while before continuing to walk forward. However, his body was swaying and his legs seemed to be weak. Did he sprain his ankle? Quickly go and tell His Highness. Shadow Guard A pushed Shadow Guard B. Shisheng drove the carriage to catch up with Qi Yuan. Shisheng handed the carriage to the shadow guards and jumped down. He walked to his side. Get in. Qi Yuan ignored her and continued to walk forward with a sullen face. It's fine if you're angry with me, but it's meaningless if you're angry with your feet. You'll end up with a chronic illness in the future, and it'll be so ugly when you walk. Scram. Shisheng's face darkened. He turned around and stood in front of Qi Yuan. The murderous intent in Qi Yuan's eyes surged, and the air seemed to freeze. What are you looking at? Do you think you can kill me? UF asterisk King retard, if it weren't for you. Shisheng paused, took a deep breath, and carried Qi Yuan to the carriage. The murderous intent in Qi Yuan's eyes suddenly became chaotic, as though he had been disrupted. He gritted his teeth and glared at Shisheng. Let go of me. Suddenly being carried in a princess hug by a man. Qi Yuan was really angry. That gaze of his probably wanted to chop Shisheng countless times. Shisheng ignored his gaze, grabbed his flailing hands, and threw him into the carriage. With a cold expression he said, I'll let you go. Qi Yuan was a little dizzy from the fall. By the time he sat up, Shisheng was already in the car. The carriage swayed as it started to move. The carriage was very warm. He didn't know what was in it, but the cold in his body was slowly being withdrawn. He felt his limbs warming up. Shisheng looked at him, and he looked back at Shisheng. Neither of them spoke. After a long time, Shisheng finally moved. He sat on the floor of the carriage, lifted the hem of Qi Yuan's clothes, and took off his boots. Qi Yuan wanted to pull his feet back, but Shisheng was too strong. He couldn't. He settled for the next best thing. Prince Rong, why don't you state your conditions? Shisheng frowned as he looked at Qi Yuan's feet. There was a large swollen area around his ankle. Because of the cold, it was green and purple. When he heard Qi Yuan's words, he raised his head slightly. You're in this prince's hands. Why should this prince state conditions? Retard. Was his brain frozen? Qi Yuan was speechless. He actually had no retort. Shisheng asked for some medicine from the system and applied it on Qi Yuan's ankle. The medicine was a little strong. Qi Yuan's body spasmed. Shisheng indifferently said, Endure it for a while. It'll be better soon. He didn't even bandage it. He directly took off his other shoe. The carriage was very warm, so it didn't feel cold. Qi Yuan retracted his foot and covered it with his clothes. What do I have that Prince Rong wants? Qi Yuan was very irritated, not knowing Shisheng's motive. What do you want? Shisheng looked at him as if he was an idiot. Didn't this prince say it before? It's all for you. There's no other motive. Qi Yuan blurted out. You like men? Shisheng looked at him strangely but didn't answer. Qi Yuan abruptly blurted out. His tone was a little cold, but he didn't mean anything else. Prince Rong's hobbies are really unique. Shisheng ignored him and took out a book to read. Qi Yuan sat next to him. His ears were filled with the sound of the carriage wheels grinding on the ground. His body swayed along with the carriage. Qi Yuan wasn't a talkative person. Since Shisheng didn't say anything, he could only remain silent with a cold expression. Rumble. An awkward sound came from inside the carriage. Shisheng shifted his gaze from the book to Qi Yuan. Hungry. Perhaps because he was too angry just now, Qi Yuan didn't feel anything. Now that it was quiet, Qi Yuan felt that he was so hungry that he didn't have any strength left. He didn't even know how long it had been since he last ate. But when he saw Shisheng's face, Qi Yuan couldn't help but be stubborn. I'm not hungry. Oh. Shisheng lowered his head and continued reading. Qi Yuan. Rumble. Qi Yuan's expression was unsightly as he clutched his stomach, feeling a little embarrassed. Shisheng didn't seem to hear him. He quietly flipped through the book. After flipping through 2 pages, he suddenly said, Stop the carriage. Shisheng put down the book. Don't run. This prince doesn't have that much time to follow you. Qi Yuan didn't plan to run either. His feet couldn't move at all. When Shisheng got off the carriage, Qi Yuan glanced at the books he had placed beside the carriage and bent over. The first 2 books were quite serious. They were records of the grand historian. But the last 2 books were different. Just by looking at the cover, he could tell that they weren't serious books. Qi Yuan threw the book back and leaned back to rest. He had to think about how to go back. He couldn't count on Qi Yao's people. Those people probably couldn't wait for him to not go back. But how could he let them do as they wished? Your Highness. A loud shout pulled Qi Yuan back from his thoughts. He opened his eyes abruptly and lifted the curtain to look outside. A secret guard stood beside the carriage, looking anxiously into the depths of the forest. Faint sounds of fighting could be heard from there. A figure swept past from the side. Look after His Majesty. I'll go help His Highness. But just as he rushed out, the other secret guards came back. His Highness wants us to take His Majesty and retreat first. But His Highness, the secret guard waved his hand. Retreat. Qi Yuan lowered the curtain. A strange light flashed in his cold eyes. He lowered his eyes, his long eyelashes hiding his emotions. Asterisk begging for monthly votes. Chapter 1195. The carriage was moving at a fast speed, and the bumps were even more severe. Qi Yuan hadn't felt this kind of fleeing for his life in a long time. He clenched his fists, trying his best to ignore the face that popped up in his mind. Qi Yuan loosened his grip. He was so powerful, did he need to worry? No, why would he need to worry about someone who kidnapped him? He wasn't worried, definitely not. The carriage slowed down, and the door was opened. Shadow Guard A stood outside. Your Majesty, we will wait for your Highness here. There are snacks for you to fill your stomach first. Shadow Guard A placed the snacks wrapped in oil paper into the carriage and closed the door. Qi Yuan didn't even have time to say a word. Outside the carriage, Shadow Guard A walked a little further away, patting his chest as he spoke to the Shadow Guard beside him. Her Highness seems to be in a bad mood recently. She scared me to death just now. I almost thought she was going to kill me too. Her Highness is getting more and more powerful. Shadow Guard B sighed. Indeed. Shadow Guard A nodded. The people who chased us from the Crimson Glory Empire were from the Crimson Glory Empire. Who are the people chasing us now? They look like people from the martial arts world. Shadow Guard B lowered his voice. We'll talk about it when Her Highness returns. Shisheng returned with 4 rabbits. The Shadow Guard's expressions could only be described with one word: embarrassment. Your Highness, you're still in the mood to hunt rabbits after killing people? Shisheng handed the rabbits to Shadow Guard A and prepared to board the carriage. Shadow Guard A hurriedly stopped her. Your Highness, who were those people just now? Shisheng threw something over. Shadow Guard A caught it and looked down. It was a token. Shadow Guard A was shocked. This is from the palace? How did the people from the palace find out about their whereabouts so quickly? Shisheng didn't answer and turned to board the carriage. Qi Yuan glanced at her coldly. He noticed that she had changed her clothes from blue to black. Her face was even more dazzling, and her every movement seemed to exude a sense of nobility. Who knew how many girls would fall for such a person? Qi Yuan felt that he was paying too much attention to her and forced himself to look away. Prince Rong has many enemies. It's all right. This was nothing. When I was powerful, I was the enemy of everyone. Qi Yuan could tell that she wasn't being modest. Instead, he felt a bit regretful. Did she think that she had too few enemies? Was there something wrong with her? Aren't you hungry? Why aren't you eating? Shisheng glanced at the untouched desserts. Qi Yuan coldly said, I'm afraid it's poisonous. Shisheng was amused. How could I use such a method to poison someone? You're looking down on me. Qi Yuan glanced at her, his thin lips moving slightly. Then how will Prince Rong poison her? Shisheng answered matter-of-factly, just force it down his throat. Qi Yuan. Such a violent method, it would be better to poison the snacks. Shisheng added, but I don't use poison. It's boring. Since it was so troublesome to poison him, it would be much easier to just use a sword. Qi Yuan subconsciously asked, what does Prince Rong think is interesting? Shisheng looked at Qi Yuan and smirked. Just kill them. What's the point of keeping them alive? Qi Yuan replied coldly, what if I can't kill him? Then make things difficult for them. For example, the male and female leads. If this prince is uncomfortable, then I have to make others feel even more uncomfortable. So how did I make Prince Rong feel uncomfortable? Why do you have to make me feel uncomfortable? Shisheng raised his eyebrows. How did you make me feel uncomfortable? The first time we met, you wanted to chop me up and dismember me. The second time we met, you used a trap to deal with me. The third time he didn't seem to have time to do anything. So be it. Qi Yuan's expression was cold. A stranger appeared in Prince Rong's room. Do you think he would invite him to drink tea and chat? Shisheng. Seems like there's nothing wrong with that. To him, she was just a stranger. Fine, I'll let you be for now. Your Highness, The rabbit is ready. Shadow Guard A's voice sounded from outside the carriage. Shisheng opened the carriage door. The aroma of roasted rabbit meat immediately wafted in, and Qi Yuan saw it. Shadow Guard A brought 2 rabbit legs. Shisheng gave one to Qi Yuan. Qi Yuan didn't take it. Shisheng coldly snorted. I won't bury you if you starve to death. Qi Yuan. With this attitude, those who didn't know better would think that he was her enemy. Qi Yuan clenched his teeth and took the rabbit leg from Shisheng. He didn't want to make things difficult for his stomach. However, looking at the rabbit leg in front of him, Qi Yuan didn't know how to eat it. He had been taught all kinds of etiquette since he was a child. Even during his most destitute period, he had never eaten like this. Qi Yuan looked at Shisheng, who was gnawing on the rabbit leg. His table manners weren't ugly, but eating like this definitely didn't look good. He could only say that it wasn't disgusting. Only the main character would be able to chew on a rabbit's leg in such a beautiful manner. Qi Yuan frowned. Do you have a knife? Shisheng lifted his eyelids and glanced at him, as if asking him what he wanted. Qi Yuan looked at the rabbit leg in his hand. Shisheng rolled his eyes. You're too nosy. She took out a clean dagger from her space and handed it to him before continuing to gnaw on her rabbit leg. Qi Yuan looked at the dagger in his hand and glanced at her neck from the corner of his eye. He was very close to her. If he was fast enough, he could subdue her. As this thought flashed past his mind, he tightened his grip on the dagger. After a while, he released it and began to cut the meat from the rabbit leg. Shisheng lowered his eyes to hide the emotions that were surging in them. The 2 of them ate quietly. Shisheng finished his food quickly. She got off the carriage to wash her hands and stood outside for a while before getting back into the carriage. She threw a handkerchief in front of Qi Yuan. Wipe your hands. We have to travel through the night. If you're not feeling well, bear with it. Qi Yuan. Sure enough, the moment he cleaned himself up, the carriage started moving at almost the same speed as before. She said that they were traveling through the night, and they really were traveling through the night. They didn't stop except for when they were eating. Sometimes, they even encountered people who wanted to kill them. Every time, it was Shisheng who did it, but he almost never saw them. He only saw them once. It was raining that day. Perhaps the sound of the rain covered their tracks. By the time Shisheng discovered them, they were already near the carriage. In his palace, she only knocked people unconscious and didn't take their lives. But here, every move was fatal. She was like a demon that harvested lives. She was strange and indifferent. It was as if she didn't kill people, as if they were no different from the flowers and plants around them. There was a strong murderous aura around her. It was the kind of aura that only people who had experienced killing would have. Even though Qi Yuan had killed many people, he was still shocked at that time. But when she returned, that feeling disappeared. It was as if he was imagining things. The Prince Rong he knew shouldn't be like this. This is a fake group. Little Fairy. I want to do a daily routine. Cherub. Who's Chong? Little Fairy. Why are your thoughts so dirty? Cherub. Shy emoji. It's all because you taught me well. Little Fairy. I'm not a scapegoat. I didn't do anything. My daily routine is to vote. Remember. Chapter 1196. As they hurried along, Qi Yuan's expression was unsightly. When he saw the northern Liang imperial city, Qi Yuan heaved a sigh of relief. They had finally arrived. Your Highness, the city has been sealed. Shadow Guard B had gone to investigate and came back to report. Shisheng leaned against the window, his gaze sweeping past the city gates. What's the situation in the city? I don't know yet. We have to contact them to know. Shadow Guard B's tone was heavy. Sealing the city was not a small matter. Something big must have happened in the city. Go and contact them. Shadow Guard B nodded and left to contact the people inside. However, he did not get any response even after contacting all the people he could contact. In the end, he used an uncommon method to get the news. Shadow Guard B came back trembling in fear. With great difficulty, he said, Your Highness, the Sima family will be executed at noon. Noon was fast approaching. Prince Rong's situation is not good. Qi Yuan sat at the back and looked at Shisheng calmly. Why don't you let me go back? I might be able to help you take revenge. Shi Sheng ignored the crazy Qi Yuan and jumped off the carriage. He ordered the others, take him and follow me. Your Highness? What do you want to do? Shi Sheng looked at the sky and said faintly, I want Northern Liang to change its owner. The emperor was heartless first. Don't blame me for being merciless. The shadow guards all stared at Shi Sheng. How could their highness make it sound so easy for Northern Liang to change its owner? Your Highness. Shadow Guard A came forward to persuade him. We can't enter the city now. There might be traps inside. So what? Shi Sheng took out his iron sword. If you want to leave, you can leave now. If you don't follow me in, you might even be able to become a hero of the country. Shadow Guard A. They only hoped to not die. With so few people, they couldn't even raid the execution ground. Their mission was to protect Shi Sheng. If Shi Sheng wanted to enter, they had no choice but to follow him. The security at the northern gate should not be as tight as here. We can enter from there. Before Dark Guard A could finish his words, Dark Guard B suddenly yelled out. Your Highness. They saw Shi Sheng walking towards the city gates without hiding anything. Boom. The city gate in the distance suddenly collapsed. When the tall city gate fell, the people inside screamed in fright. It was chaos. The crowd watched as the Shi Sheng swaggered into the city. Shi Sheng pulled the iron sword out of the door and looked at the people around him. One of them was riding a horse, presumably a general. He shouted angrily, Prince Rong, are you trying to rebel? His sharp gaze swept over Shi Sheng, his eyes gloomy. Why did Prince Rong come back at this time? I didn't want to rebel. Why would she rebel for no reason? Then what do you want to do now? The gate was broken without any warning, and the general's heart was filled with anger. The Shi Sheng tilted his head. I don't like the city gate, so I demolished it. Do you have a problem with me demolishing the city gate? The general's face was ashen. This was the city gate of the imperial city, which represented Northern Liang. If this gate was not a rebellion, what else could it be? Arrest Prince Rong. The general waved his hand and ordered. The higher-ups had said that no one from the Sima clan was to be spared. This Prince Rong was naturally within the Sima clan's jurisdiction. With just you. The Shi Sheng laughed arrogantly, waving the sword in his hand. Waves of anguished wails sounded. Qi Yuan and 2 shadow guards stood outside the city gate, looking at the scene inside, their hearts filled with indescribable shock. No one in the world would dare to be so arrogant as to fight against an entire city by themselves. The shadow guards were only there to protect Qi Yuan. Rather than protecting him, it was more like watching him and not letting him escape. They stepped on the blood on the ground as they walked forward. The sounds of fighting at the city gate had already alerted the people at the execution ground. At this time, only the officials were left. The commoners had already fled. They thought that the Shi Sheng would come to the execution ground, but the sound passed through the streets beside the execution ground and did not reach them. Someone stumbled over. Prince Rong. Prince Rong went to the imperial palace. Lord Sima was kneeling on the execution ground. His hair was silver and his face was full of wrinkles. His eyes were cloudy as he stared at the ground. When he heard that the Shi Sheng was going to the imperial palace, his expressionless face finally showed some emotion. The man kneeling beside Lord Sima said resentfully, Father, what is His Highness trying to do? It wasn't easy for us to get him out. Why is he coming back? Lord Sima's cracked lips moved, but he didn't say a word. What a sin. Our whole family was buried because of him, but he came back to die without a word. The man's voice was filled with grief and indignation. The people kneeling behind him all shed tears when they heard it. His Majesty has long wanted to deal with the Sima family. Even if His Highness didn't come, we would have reached this point sooner or later. Husband, don't blame His Highness. The woman beside the man choked with sobs. Who's blaming him? The man suddenly roared, his eyes red. I didn't agree when my little sister wanted to enter the imperial palace. She insisted, but look at what happened to her. Her family is ruined, and she can't even keep the last of her bloodline. The woman looked regretful. Her husband had always doted on Prince Rong. How could he blame him? That's enough, everyone has their own fate. Lord Sima, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke. His voice was filled with vicissitudes of life. "We've done all we can. Just wait." Whether they lived or died, the result would be known very soon. Since Lord Sima had spoken, the others didn't dare to speak. The officials at the execution ground didn't know what to do. The sounds of fighting could be heard from the direction of the imperial palace, causing everyone's hearts to palpitate and their scalps to go numb. After an unknown amount of time, noon had passed and the sun set in the west. The entire imperial city seemed to have fallen into a deathly silence. The sound of horse hooves broke the silence of the imperial city and gradually approached. The imperial edict has arrived. The people who were still frozen in the execution ground immediately knelt to receive the edict. The person who came opened the imperial edict and read it out loud. Lord Sima is to enter the imperial palace immediately for an audience. The rest are to be sent back to the Sima residence. Not only were the officials surprised, even the entire Sima clan was dumbfounded. Was this an acquittal? Father? Lord Sima shook his head. He didn't know what was going on either. You all go back first. I'll enter the imperial palace to take a look. Whether it was a blessing or a curse he would know when he saw it. When Lord Sima and the others entered the imperial palace, they didn't see anyone else. When they arrived at the throne room, they saw a group of palace maids and eunuchs kneeling outside. It was estimated that almost all the palace maids and eunuchs in the imperial palace were here. The imperial guards were either lying down or kneeling. All of them looked dispirited, as if they had suffered some kind of blow. Lord Sima has arrived. Lord Sima walked through the group of palace maids and eunuchs, and stepped onto the steps of the throne room. He had been walking on this path almost every day, but he had never felt as long as he did now. Lord Sima has arrived. Asterisk monthly votes. Monthly votes. Monthly votes. Monthly votes. Chapter 1197. Announcements came one after another until he stepped into the throne room. The scene inside was completely different from what he had imagined. However, it was even more bizarre than he had imagined. The dragon throne that had once been placed at the top was now in pieces. The entire throne room looked as if it had been swept by a tornado. Everything that could be destroyed was basically destroyed. The youth stood in the middle, and beside him stood a man wearing a dragon robe. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at the youth expressionlessly. He emitted a cold aura that kept strangers away. The once high and mighty emperor was now lying on the ground, unconscious. Even though Lord Sima was mentally prepared, he couldn't help but be stunned by the scene before him. Shisheng turned around and met Lord Sima's gaze. He smiled and called out, "Grandfather." Lord Sima's first reaction was that this wasn't Prince Rong. Prince Rong couldn't have such a calm and collected aura. However, upon closer inspection, this was indeed Prince Rong. He had watched the child grow up. He couldn't be mistaken. Lord Sima suppressed the strange thoughts in his heart. "Your Highness." What was the situation now? Who was that man in the dragon robe? His Majesty didn't have such a son. "I'll leave Baoyang to you for the time being. This is the Imperial Jade Seal and the Military Seal. Grandfather, you don't need me to teach you how to make them, right?" Shisheng handed over the two boxes. Lord Sima felt his heart skip a beat. It was even more bizarre than when he saw the emperor lying on the ground. His throat went dry. "Your Highness, this is rebellion." Shisheng's lips curled. "Grandfather, if you didn't rebel, your head would be on the ground right now. Your Majesty, he is your biological father. In the future, you will be criticized behind your back. Rebellion was a serious crime. He wanted to kill me, why can't I retaliate? Grandfather doesn't know yet, right? He sent people to kill me at the border. She wasn't afraid of being criticized. Wasn't it just a bunch of NPCs? She was crazy to be angry with a bunch of data." "What?" Lord Sima's eyes widened, a complicated undercurrent surging in his eyes. How could he be so ruthless? What did the Sima family do to the imperial family? "Grandfather, I'll go back and rest first. You can do whatever you want with the rest." Before Lord Sima could speak, Shisheng said, "I'm not interested in the throne. You can do as you see fit." She was very tired after such a long time. Sir Sima watched as Shisheng and Qi Yuan left. After a while, he finally regained his senses and asked Shadow Guard B who hadn't left. "Who is that man?" Shadow Guard B was completely unperturbed. "Reporting to my lord, the Emperor of the Crimson Glory Empire." When you see such a rebellious person, you will also feel no ripples in your heart. There was no such thing as the most awesome, only more awesome. Ooh. Lord Sima felt that he had just experienced so much that his brain was a little slow to react. The Emperor of the Crimson Glory Kingdom, Qi Yuan. Shadow Guard B repeated seriously. "Lord Sima. How could His Highness be together with that tyrant Qi Yuan? Could it be that Qi Yuan was the one who helped force the abdication?" Qi Yao had always been eyeing Bai Liang covetously. What was his motive? A series of questions surged into Master Sima's mind. Shadow Guard B continued to release poison. "Sir, he was kidnapped by His Highness. To be more accurate, he was snatched." They weren't the only ones who were dumbfounded. Lord Sima looked at Shadow Guard B strangely. "What did you just say? I might have heard wrongly. Say it again." Shadow Guard B nodded. "Sir, don't struggle anymore. You didn't hear wrongly. His Highness snatched him. His Highness snatched the Emperor of the Crimson Glory Empire." Lord Sima. Was he dreaming? Everything that had happened today felt unreal. Shisheng left the throne room. The moment he came out, the palace maids and eunuchs kneeling outside immediately kept quiet out of fear. They were the lowest class of people and didn't want to die. Qi Yuan was a step behind Shisheng. He looked at the last blood-red sun that was being swallowed by the darkness. "Aren't you afraid that they will make the first move and behead him?" Shisheng glanced sideways. "That's their fate. What can I do?" "Didn't you rush back to save them?" Shisheng shrugged. "If I can save them, then I will. If I can't, then so be it. To me there's no loss." "Then why did you rush back?" Qi Yuan increasingly felt that there was something wrong with this person. Since he didn't care, why did he rush back to save them? As a person, you have to work hard. Shisheng paused. "Look, didn't I save them? I don't want to talk to a lunatic. We are tired." "Then let's go. We'll stay in the palace for today." Shisheng walked towards Pure Flower's palace. Qi Yuan only found out a long time later that she had made two plans. If they decided to behead the Sima family, there would be hidden guards present. She wouldn't let any accidents happen. Qi Yuan looked towards the horizon again. The last ray of the sun disappeared, and the entire world sank into darkness. Tomorrow would be a completely different day. Pure Flower's palace had been empty for several months, so it was even more deserted. Fortunately, Lord Sima heard that she was staying here, and sent people to tidy it up. After tidying up the room, Qi Yuan immediately went in and shut Shisheng outside. Shisheng rolled his eyes and asked the eunuch beside him, "Has my mother been brought out?" The young eunuch shivered. "Her Majesty was sent back to the Sima residence by Lord Sima." Shisheng nodded and asked the young eunuch to leave. She looked at the tightly shut door, and turned to enter the room next door. However, there was no rest for the entire night. Shisheng only dealt with the people in the palace. Although he had obtained the commander's seal, there were still many people who had troops. The ministers joined forces, and the palace was in chaos the entire night. At this moment, Chu Luo, who had the most troops, wasn't around. When they went to the military camp to seek help, they were ignored. Chu Luo's men couldn't be mobilized by the commander's seal. They had to have Chu Luo's token and commander's seal, or Chu Luo's personal orders. Chu Luo had a total of 60,000 troops stationed in the military camp outside the city. There were so many people, but they couldn't be used. The group of ministers vomited blood. Since Chu Luo's side couldn't work, the ministers could only gather their scattered troops. Since there was a huge commotion outside, the palace naturally wasn't any better. Shisheng couldn't take it anymore. He dragged his sword outside the palace and had a fight. He directly threatened them that if anyone dared to cause trouble again, they would go to hell together. Shisheng had occupied the palace alone. The news of him killing his way into the palace from the city gates was even more widespread. These people were more or less afraid of him. Sheng threw a few energy balls to the secret guards guarding the palace gate. If these people dared to cause trouble, he would blow them up. He didn't believe that they weren't afraid of death. Sheng dealt with this group of idiots and returned to Pure Flower's palace. Then he realized that Qi Yuan's door was open. There was no one in the room, and the bed hadn't been touched. Sheng's lips twitched. Did this fellow run away again? He's asking for a beating. #today I am looking for a ticket to burn flowers #friendly reminder. There are only two groups in this book. One is the VIP group. The other is the ordinary group. There are no other groups, the ordinary group is full. Whether you can enter or not depends on your luck. Maybe one day someone will leave, smile. You don't know how to open a group, so I'm also very helpless about Cherub who didn't join the group in time. The VIP group is still very empty. The way to join the group is to post at the top of the book review section. Chapter 1198. Sheng circled around Pure Flower's palace and saw Qi Yuan standing at the end of a corridor. He seemed to be looking at something with an impatient expression and an oppressive coldness emanating from him. It's good that he didn't run away. Qi Yuan turned around and saw Sheng. He paused for a few seconds before walking over. His face was filled with indifference. He pursed his lips and opened them, but no sound came out. Sheng asked strangely, "What's wrong?" Qi Yuan paused for a moment before saying, "We are in a hurry." Sheng really didn't understand what he meant. "What's the rush?" Qi Yuan frowned. "I need to go to the washroom." Sheng. "If you need to go to the washroom, then go to the washroom. Why did you have to be so secretive? You came out just for this? Did you think we ran away?" He wanted to run, but how could he leave the palace? There should be people outside the palace right now. He'd be crazy to run. Sheng. "Since you have a criminal record, there's nothing wrong with thinking that, right?" Sheng brought Qi Yuan to the outhouse. Qi Yuan went in. Sheng wanted to follow him, but he turned around and frowned. "What are you doing?" Sheng said with a straight face. "I'm afraid you'll run away." "We have foresight." Qi Yuan's expression was cold. "You're not allowed to come in. We're both men. What are you afraid of?" Qi Yuan slammed the door shut. Sheng rubbed his chin and smiled. Only that idiot Feng Xi could have such a temper. When Qi Yuan came out, Sheng was leaning against the door. He glanced at him before striding towards his room. Sheng followed him from a distance. Qi Yuan was irritated and wanted to chop someone up, but this wasn't his palace. He couldn't call anyone. "Prince Rong, can you stop following us?" Qi Yuan couldn't help but turn around and say impatiently, "We don't like men. Don't waste your time on us." "As long as this prince likes it." Sheng tilted his head and smiled. The moonlight shone down from the corridor, casting a hazy glow over her face. Her face seemed to become more beautiful, even more exquisite and beautiful than the women outside. However, it wasn't as delicate as theirs, breaking with a single snap. Qi Yuan turned his head away in annoyance. He couldn't describe the feeling in his heart. In any case, it wasn't good. He had never felt like this before. He took a deep breath, turned around, and quickly went back to his room and locked the door. Sheng shrugged and stood outside the room for a while before returning to his room. The next few days were filled with turmoil. People from all walks of life tried to suppress them. With the Sheng in charge, naturally, no one succeeded. Not only did no one succeed, but the Sheng even violently instigated a few people to defect. When Master Sima was still alive, he still had a few trusted aides. Now they could still be used. With their help, the court quickly stabilized. However, it was very lively outside. The throne was changed overnight. It was as if the weather had suddenly changed, catching everyone off guard. Of course, most of these commoners were just gossiping. Who would become the emperor had nothing to do with them. As long as they had enough to eat and clothes to wear, they didn't need to worry about anything else. The male and female leads were still fighting dungeons in Crimson Star. But the Sheng had already cleared the Bailiang Imperial Palace. At this speed, the male and female leads wouldn't be able to catch up to her clearing speed even if they tried to curry favor. My host has a special clearing technique, but what's with the tiring heart? The scariest thing in games was to encounter someone like the Shi Sheng. You're still panting and following the mission route, but the other party has already finished fighting the final boss and distributed the equipment. When Chu Luo received the news, the entire matter was almost settled. The throne had changed and the sky of Bailiang had changed. Although Chu Luo had military power in her hands, he was far away in Crimson Star. Distant water couldn't quench a present thirst, so there was nothing he could do. Most importantly, he never expected Rong Wang to have such strength. Compared to Chu Luo, Lu Xian was much calmer. She knew that Shi Sheng was like her, and wasn't from this world. Since she had also transmigrated, she definitely had some ability. Your Highness, young Master Qi isn't eating. Secret Guarda stood beside Shi Sheng and reported. Because they were in Bailiang, it wasn't appropriate to address him as His Majesty, so they all called Qi Yuan young Master Qi. This group of secret guards was now considered Shi Sheng's personal secret guards. Shi Sheng flipped through his book and said without looking up, "If he doesn't want to eat, so be it. How can he starve to death if he doesn't eat? He's not that delicate." Secret Guard A. Didn't you say that there was something abnormal to report to you? Why was he making a fuss over nothing now? He couldn't understand His Highness. When Lord Sima entered, he happened to hear Shi Sheng's words. The corners of his lips twitched speechlessly. Lord. When Secret Guard A saw Lord Sima, he quickly bowed. He hadn't officially ascended the throne yet, so he still called him Lord. Lord Sima waved his hand, and Secret Guard A tactfully retreated. Shi Sheng put down his book. Grandpa, what's the matter? Your Highness, what are your plans for snatching the Emperor of Crimson Star? After so many days, she hadn't imprisoned Qi Yuan. Qi Yuan was even able to wear the imperial robes and strut around the palace. Now everyone knew that the Emperor of Crimson Star was in Pure Flower's palace. I don't have any plans. He's the Emperor of Crimson Star. He's not an ordinary person. Lord Sima was worried. I just received a report that Dan Ming has already brought people over. What does your Highness want with him? Shi Sheng blinked. Isn't he disliked in Crimson Star? Why would someone come looking for him? Lord Sima shook his head and sighed. The Dan family is different. He glanced at Shi Sheng. The Dan family controls most of the military power. Otherwise, why do you think no one dares to rebel against him? It's because the Dan family is standing behind him. Is the Dan family stupid? Shi Sheng said bluntly. Shouldn't they be rebelling at a time like this? Running over to fetch someone was simply crazy. Lord Sima shook his head and sighed. Some people won't change their minds once they've decided on something. So be it. Do you think we're afraid of him? Capture him too and force the Dan family to surrender. We'll rule the world. Shi Sheng's heroic spirit soared. Lord Sima almost choked on his saliva. He had a good relationship with the Dan family. Grandpa Dan had helped him so much before. If he really did that, he would be an ungrateful person. He couldn't do something like that. Your Highness, can't you tell me what you want to do with Qi Yuan? I don't want to do anything. She really didn't want to do anything with Qi Yuan. She just wanted to snatch him back and raise him for observation. Now that she had basically confirmed it, all the more she couldn't let him go. Lord Sima didn't seem to plan on leaving until he got an answer. Shi Sheng scratched his head. That is, I've taken a liking to him. Lord Sima. Lord Sima looked at Shi Sheng strangely. Shi Sheng said with a straight face, Grandfather, why are you looking at me like that? I'm a girl. What's wrong with taking a liking to a man? Lord Sima finally reacted. That's right. His Highness was a girl. It was normal for her to take a liking to a man. There was nothing wrong with that. It was just that the man she took a liking to was a little problematic. Not to mention Qi Yuan's status, just his temper alone was enough. How many people could tolerate that temper of his? Wouldn't His Highness be wronged? No. Lord Sima shook his head. Your Highness, you can have any man you want. Qi Yuan is not good. Chapter 1199. Grandfather, I know what I'm doing. Don't worry about it. Just take care of those trivial matters. Shisheng didn't want to listen to the old man's nagging, and hurriedly stopped Lord Sima. Your Highness, Shisheng straightened his expression and said seriously, Grandfather, I'm not the Prince Rong of the past. I know what I'm doing. Lord Sima looked at the youth in front of him and smiled bitterly. Prince Rong wasn't the Prince Rong of the past, he was a completely different person. The Prince Rong of the past was arrogant and despotic, but that was because of his status. Now, Prince Rong was still arrogant, but that arrogance seemed to have come from his bones. She had the strength to be arrogant. It was as if she was born this way. She didn't need to hide her brilliance and didn't need to look at anyone's eyes. She was the one in charge. Lord Sima's experience these past few days could be said to be very strange. He paused for a few seconds. Go visit your Mufei when you have time. She misses you. Okay. Shisheng obediently agreed. Lord Sima didn't mention Qi Yuan's matter again. It wasn't clear if he had other plans, or if he really didn't care. He chatted with Shisheng for a while before getting up to leave. After leaving Pure Flower's palace, Lord Sima looked at his son who was waiting outside and asked with a complicated expression, Do you think Prince Rong is still our Prince Rong? This sentence was a bit vague, but Sima Yang understood. Father, let's wait for little sister to see him first. They weren't sure if he was the real Prince Rong. After all, he had changed too much. But he didn't hide it, and was open and honest. He wasn't afraid of being seen through at all. This made them even more confused. On second thought, he was so powerful. Even if he had other motives, why would he pretend to be someone else? Therefore, this person was most likely Prince Rong. Of course, Sima Yang didn't dare to say it out loud. After Lord Sima left, Shisheng rubbed the space between his brows and got up to walk towards Qi Yuan's room. Before he even reached the room, he heard a crashing sound. The palace maids and eunuchs were all kneeling on the floor, their faces pale and their bodies trembling. Shadow Guard B was leaning against the door. His body was as taut as a bowstring as if he had been frightened. Seeing Shisheng come over, he hurriedly ran over. Your Highness, Sir Qi is too scary. You should go take a look. What's going on? Qi Yuan had been here for so long, but he had never lost his temper like this before. Shadow Guard B swallowed his saliva. Just now, when the meal was delivered, young Master Qi suddenly lost his temper. A palace maid was frightened and spilled the soup, almost spilling it on young Master Qi. Young Master Qi. That was it. The murderous aura on his body was simply frightening. Shisheng understood what had happened, and went in through the front door. Qi Yuan was standing in the middle of a mess, staring at her with murderous eyes, as if he had expected her to come in. He opened his mouth slightly and said in a cold voice, Kill those people. Shisheng. Shisheng glanced at the food residue on the ground and frowned slightly. Didn't she tell them not to use these ingredients? The things that Feng Xiai was picky about were basically the same. There would be a few deviations, and these deviations would be determined by his mood. She had tried it from the beginning, but Qi Yuan didn't eat those things. Therefore, he ordered his men not to serve these things anymore. Shisheng glanced at him. This isn't your Qi Yao. Don't lose your temper with this prince. The murderous aura in Qi Yuan's eyes faded a little, but it was replaced by an unknown emotion. Does Prince Rong want to deprive us of our freedom? If you want to try, this prince doesn't mind. He could also try imprisoning him in a small dark room. Qi Yuan snorted, turned around and walked inside. Shisheng had the servants come in to clean up the room. Only after everyone had left did she enter the inner room. Qi Yuan stood in front of the window. Shisheng didn't approach him. He stood at the door and asked, This prince is going out of the palace. Are you coming? Qi Yuan ignored him. Shisheng waited for a moment. Seeing that he still didn't move, he said, I'll bring you out to take a look. Perhaps you'll have a chance to escape. Are you sure you don't want to go? Qi Yuan finally turned around. His cold gaze swept over her. This prince must travel according to the emperor's standards. You still dare to negotiate with me? Don't you know what kind of situation you're in? Shisheng imitated him and said with a cold expression, Then you stay here. This prince is leaving. Qi Yuan. Shisheng really turned around and left. Qi Yuan's expression changed a few times before he chased after him. Shisheng walked rather quickly. Qi Yuan chased after him until he reached the corridor outside before catching up. He didn't call out to her and just followed from a distance. When they were about to reach the entrance of Huaqing Palace, Qi Yuan saw that someone had brought some things over. Shisheng asked them to put the things in the horse carriage parked outside. After the people dispersed, Shisheng turned to look at him. "You're walking so slowly. Do you want this prince to carry you?" The palace maids and eunuchs around them had strange expressions on their faces, but they could only pretend that they didn't hear anything. Qi Yuan quickened his pace. Without needing Shisheng to say anything, he directly got into the horse carriage. Shisheng followed him and sat opposite him. "Let's go." The carriage started to move slowly. It was very stable, unlike when it was outside. Shisheng opened the food box on the small table in the middle of the horse carriage. His tone softened. "You've calmed down. Eat something." Qi Yuan subconsciously pursed his lips. These things were actually prepared for him. Qi Yuan stared at the food box and said sarcastically, "Bilyang's imperial chefs aren't that good." Shisheng didn't react. He said calmly, "Just put up with it. When I'm free, I'll go and capture the imperial chefs from Qiyao for you." "Qi Yuan." He glared at Shisheng angrily. He grabbed the chopsticks that Shisheng had placed on the table and picked up the bowl to eat. Shisheng stared at him as he ate. Qi Yuan suddenly shouted in exasperation, "Don't look at me like that. This prince likes to look at you. This prince doesn't like men." Qi Yuan said these words with a murderous look. He made a gesture to put down the bowl. Shisheng quickly averted his gaze. "All right, I won't look at you. Hurry up and eat." Shisheng lowered his head and continued reading. He really didn't look at him. Qi Yuan looked at him for a while before he started eating. Qi Yuan didn't eat much. He put down the bowl and sat back in the innermost seat. It was the seat furthest away from Shisheng. Shisheng glanced at him. He put the food back into the food box and handed it over. "Do you hate this prince that much?" Shisheng asked him. Qi Yuan crossed his arms. The coldness between his eyebrows seemed to overflow. "You were captured. How can you not hate him? This prince can't do anything about it." Shisheng spread his hands. He was also in despair. "Who asked you to be so weak and have no memory? Why don't you give this prince a kiss? Maybe you won't think that way." Qi Yuan seemed to have heard something unbelievable. He glared at him. "You wish. Actually, this prince..." Shoo. The carriage suddenly went out of control and jolted. Shisheng fell backwards due to inertia and landed on Qi Yuan. The carriage quickly stabilized. Shisheng looked up at Qi Yuan. His expression was extremely bad. Shisheng was amused. He finished his sentence. "You wish." Her scent hit him in the face. It didn't smell like a man, only a delicate fragrance. Qi Yuan suddenly reached out to push her. Chapter 1200. Sima Hui had been locked up in the cold palace and was not in good spirits. After recuperating for a long time, her complexion had improved. Hearing that her daughter was coming, Sima Hui immediately began to dress up and instruct the servants to do this and that. When she finally heard that Prince Rong had arrived, Sima Hui rushed out. Shisheng and Sima Yang were talking when Sima Hui came out. Both of them looked at her. Even though Sima Hui was old, she still looked good. After carefully dressing up, she looked even more radiant. However, her eyes had lost their color and were filled with sadness. Only when she saw Shisheng did the sadness in her eyes gradually disappear. What happened to your forehead? Why is it swollen? Who hit you?" Sima Hui asked anxiously when she saw the red swelling on Shisheng's forehead. Shisheng glanced at Qi Yuan, who was standing beside him. The latter's gaze was lowered and his hands were clasped in front of his chest. Shisheng smiled. "Mother, I'm fine. I just accidentally bumped into it." Sima Hui was relieved. "How could you be so careless? Go in quickly. Mother will apply medicine for you. It won't look good if there's a scar. Sister, I'll go to the palace to find father first. You and His Highness can have a good chat. Father and I will come back for dinner tonight." Sima Yang was very perceptive. "Okay, go ahead." Sima Hui only had eyes for Shisheng. How could she look at anyone else? She didn't even look at the people standing beside Shisheng. Sima Yang glanced at Qi Yuan. Young Master Qi, shall I arrange for someone to show you around the residence? Qi Yuan didn't respond and kept his head lowered. Shisheng said, Uncle, he can just follow me. Sima Yang was a little worried. This was the emperor of Qi Yao. Sima Hui's heart was filled with her own baby. She didn't even listen to what Sima Yang and Shisheng were saying. She pulled him inside. Sima Hui brought Shisheng into the room and closed the door in one smooth motion. Qi Yuan was locked outside. He stared at the closed door. For a moment, his expression was ruthless. His body emitted a strong murderous aura, but it disappeared in an instant. He turned to look at shadow guards at B.C. and D not far away. He then looked at the height of the courtyard. Could he climb over it? Sima Hui and Shisheng only talked about their daily lives, and even forced her to change her clothes. It was not until dinner time that Shisheng finally saw Qi Yuan. Why didn't you run away? Shisheng walked to his side and followed his line of sight. There was a pond there. Qi Yuan responded with a cold snort. How could he run? Behind him were hidden guards, and all around him were high walls. He did it on purpose. Your Highness, it's time to eat. A servant shouted from afar. Shisheng looked at Qi Yuan. Let's go. Qi Yuan didn't move. He didn't want to eat with those people. His hand was suddenly grabbed by someone, and a soft voice sounded in his ear. You eat alone. Qi Yuan was stunned for a moment. When he came back to his senses, he realized that he had actually left with someone. Her hand was a little cold. It was very small and soft, not like a man's hand at all. She held on to him with no intention of letting go. Qi Yuan tried to struggle, but failed. At this time, they had already entered a crowd. Qi Yuan's dragon robe was already eye-catching. And now that he was being held by Shisheng, it was even more eye-catching. I heard that he is the emperor of Qi Yao. Why is your Highness holding hands with him? Your Highness doesn't like men, does he? It can't be. But your Highness has never had a woman by his side. For other princes, even if they didn't have a first wife, they would have a concubine or a concubine. The servants were whispering, so their words didn't reach Qi Yuan's ears. However, he could see the expressions on their faces. He lowered his voice. Let go of me. Shisheng loosened his grip, but Qi Yuan immediately pulled his hand back. Prince Rong, please show some respect. Shisheng looked at him with a faint smile. Qi Yuan felt a little uncomfortable under her gaze. He averted his gaze and responded with indifference. Qi Yuan was arranged to be in a separate room. There was only a door between him and the hall outside, so he could hear the sounds outside. Qi Yuan was extremely irritated. He pushed away the bowl in front of him. Shadow Guard A standing next to him immediately tensed up. Was he going to chop someone up again? It wasn't that Shadow Guard A was panicking. It was just that the emperor had such a bad temper. However, Qi Yuan only sat there without making a sound. He didn't even flip the table. He lowered his head and stared at his own hand. There seemed to be a slimy feeling on his hand. In the next moment, he covered his hand with his sleeve with an ugly expression. What was he thinking? But he couldn't control himself. I want to wash my hands. Qi Yuan suddenly spoke. His voice seemed to be flustered and exasperated. Shadow Guard A was dumbfounded, but he quickly went to fetch water. Qi Yuan repeatedly washed his hands several times, as if doing so would make him feel better. Shadow Guard A looked at Qi Yuan's strange behavior and felt apprehensive. Should he go out and talk to His Highness? After dinner, Shisheng bid farewell to the Sima family. Sima Hui had already confirmed that this was her Aji. Sima Yang and Lord Sima also breathed a sigh of relief. Although there were some things that couldn't be explained clearly, as long as it was Prince Rong, it was fine. At least she didn't have any intention of harming them. Sima Yang originally wanted to send Shisheng and the others off, but Shisheng refused. On the way back, Qi Yuan's expression was unsightly. When they arrived at Pure Flower's palace, Qi Yuan quickly got off the carriage. After taking 2 steps, he paused and asked in an awkward voice, Is your forehead all right? Shisheng touched his forehead where the medicine had been applied. Are you worried about this, prince? Who cares about you? Qi Yuan was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. He quickly denied it, then angrily walked inside. Shisheng quickly caught up with him and grabbed his hand again. Prince Rong. Qi Yuan completely exploded. He was addicted to holding his hand. What? Shisheng moved closer to him. You won't get pregnant if you give this prince a poo. Why are you so nervous? Did you find out that you like this prince? Nonsense. Why would I like a man? Absolutely not. If you don't give this prince a poo, then it proves that you like this prince. It's not good to deceive yourself. If you like me, then say it out loud. This prince won't laugh at you. Qi Yuan was speechless. How could there be such a shameless person? Take a look at your masterpiece. Shisheng tilted his head, revealing the red and swollen forehead. He continued, as compensation, shouldn't you give this prince a hand to comfort his wounded heart? Although her forehead had been applied with medicine, it was only ordinary medicine. Thus, it still looked red and swollen. When they were in the carriage, he reached out to give her a push. Who knew that the carriage would start moving again, causing her to bump into the corner of the table? Qi Yuan knew that he was in the wrong, so he angrily glared at her. From here to the room. He meant that she could take his hand from here to the room. Shisheng didn't have any objections and entered Pure Flower's palace under the strange gazes of the palace maids and eunuchs. When they reached a garden, Shisheng suddenly stopped and ordered the people behind him, "Bring 2 chairs over." Qi Yuan's eyes widened as he gnashed his teeth. Prince Rong. Shisheng tilted his head and smiled, his eyes curved like crescent moons. You didn't say that we couldn't stop midway. Chapter 1201. A chair was quickly brought over. Qi Yuan couldn't beat Shisheng in a fight, he couldn't outtalk him, and he couldn't attack him either. He was forced to sit down. Fortunately, Shisheng didn't do anything out of line. He only held Qi Yuan's hand and looked up at the stars above. The courtyard was quiet. Dan Ming is here to pick you up. Shisheng's voice suddenly broke the silence, revealing the chill of the night. Qi Yuan's expression turned strange. Why are you telling me this? To give you something to think about so you won't commit suicide. Shisheng answered. Qi Yuan was speechless. Did he look like someone who would commit suicide? I won't go with him. Shisheng suddenly turned his head. Oh, you're still saying that you don't want to leave if you don't like this prince. Qi Yuan glared at him. It has nothing to do with you. Shisheng stopped joking. What did the Dan family do to you? Qi Yuan didn't want to talk about it. He turned his head away. What does it have to do with Prince Rong? Your business is my business. Qi Yuan's body seemed to stiffen. Then he snorted coldly and didn't say anything. He didn't say anything at all. Very good. Qi Yuan didn't know when he had fallen asleep. His dream was filled with fire, and countless faces flashed in front of him. They were all cold and indifferent faces. He seemed to hear sorrowful singing from a distant place. It was very vague and he couldn't make out what it was singing. He was locked in a small cage. His body was shackled and he was very heavy. He couldn't breathe. The scene changed abruptly. Countless figures flashed past him. He couldn't see their faces. This wasn't his memory, but it was very familiar. Qi Yuan opened his eyes abruptly. He saw a magnified face in front of him. The warmth of her lips made him realize that he was being molested. His heart seemed to stop beating. Everything around him was still. Only the face in front of him remained. Perhaps sensing that he was awake, the person above him opened her eyes and pecked him gently. She propped herself up and put some distance between them. She lowered her eyes and looked into his eyes as if she wanted to see his soul. You had a nightmare. He heard her voice. Qi Yuan looked at her coldly. So. Shisheng shrugged and got off him. It seems that you don't like the way I wake you up. Let's change it next time. Qi Yuan stood up from his chair with a sullen face. He tugged at his dragon robe, which was wrinkled by the Shisheng, and left with a flick of his sleeves. After leaving Shisheng's line of sight, Qi Yuan's body jerked. He leaned against the pillar beside him to catch his breath, and his body bent over slightly. So painful. His heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. Every beat of his heart was accompanied by a piercing pain that spread throughout his body. Those strange memories kept flashing through his mind, but he couldn't see them clearly. Whose memory was that? Why did he feel so sad? Young Master Qi, are you all right? Dark Guard B's voice rang out from the darkness. Qi Yuan's eyes darkened. He lowered his head and fell silent for a few seconds. Then he straightened his body and resumed his indifference. I'm fine. Dark Guard B didn't reply and watched Qi Yuan leave. He rubbed his chin. No, he had to talk to His Highness. Qi Yuan did not sleep the entire night. When he came out in the morning, his complexion was even worse than Ping Chang's. The eunuchs serving him did not dare to approach him. After Qi Yuan finished his breakfast, he waited for Shisheng to harass him. However, he waited until noon, but Shisheng did not appear. Not only did Shisheng not appear, even the shadow guards were nowhere to be seen. Qi Yuan opened the door and asked the eunuch outside, "Where is Prince Rong?" The eunuch didn't expect Qi Yuan to suddenly speak. He was stunned for a moment before replying, "His Highness." His Highness said that he would be back later. If young Master Qi misses His Highness, you can go to the Lingguang Temple outside the city. Who misses him? Shameless. Why would he go to the Lingguang Temple? Snatch someone. Qi Yuan narrowed his eyes and stared at the eunuch. The eunuch's hair stood on end. He felt like he was being stared at by a ferocious beast instead of a human. Bang. The door was slammed shut. The stagnant air in the room seemed to start flowing again. The eunuch was drenched in cold sweat as he patted his chest. He was scared to death. Si li hua la. The sound of things being smashed echoed in the room. The eunuch stepped back. It's fine if His Highness likes men. He even likes men with such bad tempers. His Highness also doesn't have a good temper. How could he endure it? Is this the power of love? The eunuch's mind was wandering when the door was suddenly pulled open. Prepare the carriage. The eunuch almost peed himself. Can it not be so sudden? You'll scare me to death if you scare me. The Lingguang Temple was a national temple. When Qi Yuan arrived, he found out that today was the day that Lord Sima came to pay his respects. This was also a custom. Before a new emperor ascended the throne, they had to pay their respects at the Lingguang Temple. What did that eunuch say about snatching someone? If it were him in the palace, he would have been dragged out and beheaded long ago. Qi Yuan felt that as the emperor of Crimson Glorious Empire, it wasn't good for him to go up now. He had the carriage wait below. Looking at the crowd below the Lingguang Temple, he didn't have any thoughts of running away. Now was the best time to do so. The shadow guards weren't present. The ones who sent him here were only a few eunuchs from Pure Flower's palace. With so many people, he could just create some chaos and escape. However, he didn't have any such thoughts at this time. Qi Yuan felt like he was sick. Return to the palace. He ordered the people outside with a heavy expression. As soon as he finished speaking, the carriage's curtains were lifted. Why didn't you wait for me? The youth was dressed very formally. He had bright eyes and white teeth. He was charming, and a mischievous smile hung at the corner of his mouth. Qi Yuan looked away unnaturally. His heartbeat was a bit strange. Shisheng sat next to him. I'm so tired. That abbot just won't stop. I guessed that you'd be here soon, so I found an excuse to slip away. His tone was very natural. A strange light flashed through Qi Yuan's eyes. He said with a cold expression, I was just passing by. Qi Yuan felt that something was wrong. Did you make the eunuch say that? I just wanted to see if you would come. Shisheng had an innocent expression. I was going to take you with me this morning, but I was afraid that you would be too conflicted last night, so I wanted you to sleep a bit more. Qi Yuan. Shisheng leaned towards him. Are you in love with me now? No. Qi Yuan flatly denied. Shisheng smiled and didn't argue with him. He was probably still conflicted about whether or not he was gay. It was quite interesting to see his conflicted expression. Shisheng didn't wait for the main group, and had the carriage directly returned to the city. Lingguang Temple was some distance away from the city. As they passed by a narrow mountain path, the carriage suddenly jolted and tilted to the side. Shisheng's body suddenly fell toward Qi Yuan, and the two of them crashed into the wall of the carriage. Shisheng wrapped his arms around Qi Yuan's waist and used his hands to support his body. The carriage stopped tilting, but it was still swaying like a seesaw. Fuck, who told you to attack the carriage? An angry shout came from outside. Chapter 1202. Since Dan Ming did not manage to get the person he wanted, he would be punished by old Master Dan when he went back. He might as well pretend that he had been detained as well. That way he would not be punished. What if a fight breaks out? Dan Ming had said that if they dared to send troops, he would tell them to kill the hostages. After hearing such a reason, the shadow guards expressed that Qi Yao's general really knew how to play. He was merciless when it came to cheating his father. Dan Ming stayed in Beiliang for no reason. There was some progress in the relationship between Shi Sheng and Qi Yuan. Qi Yuan was no longer so against her, but he would not take the initiative to do anything. Every time, it was Shi Sheng who would forcefully molest him, and in the end, Qi Yuan would explode. But the next day, he would appear again and repeat the previous steps. When Lu Zian and Chu Luo returned, Lord Sima had already ascended the throne. I've only been gone for a few months, and the changes are so great. Lu Zian looked at the era name on the city gate and sighed. Chu Luo's expression wasn't good as she led her men into the city. The city was very calm. It was impossible to tell that it had experienced such a huge commotion. Chu Luo walked towards the prince's residence. Lu Zian jogged after Chu Luo. Prince, what should we do now? Chu Luo pondered for a moment. Let's wait and see. The new emperor did not remove him from his position as a king. Even though there was a change of dynasty, he was still the Luo king. At that time, I wanted to topple the Sima clan. Who knew? Lu Ziyan looked in the direction of the imperial city, her gaze complicated. Not only did the Sima clan not fall, they even sat on the throne. The previous emperor had long had the intention to take care of the Sima clan. Back then, he was so close to taking down the Sima clan. If it wasn't for that transmigrator suddenly appearing and disrupting the situation, the current situation would be very different. Shisheng didn't know that Chu Luo had returned to the palace. She only knew that he had returned when she saw him in the palace. The two parties met on the steps outside the throne room. Chu Luo was on the steps, and so was Shisheng. He raised his head to look at the youth on the steps, an indescribable anger rising from the bottom of his heart. Prince Rong is truly capable. Shisheng smiled and said, "It's just SOSO." He wasn't trying to be humble at all. The Shisheng's words made one lose the desire to continue speaking. Chu Luo snorted and followed the eunuch into the throne room. "Luo King, you must take care of yourself." Shisheng's voice drifted over from behind. Chu Luo's body suddenly stopped. She turned around and a complicated light shrouded Shisheng in her eyes. The young man in front of him was still as leisurely as before. It was as if what he said just now was just following his heart. Chu Luo's mind was in a whirl. After a long time, she squeezed out a few words. "Thank you for your concern, Prince Rong." Shisheng watched Chu Luo enter the throne room. She'd better find a chance to kill the male lead. Otherwise, with his male lead halo, she'd definitely be the #1 cannon fodder. He was determined not to die. Even cannon fodder had to have dreams. Shisheng was no longer living in Pureflower's palace, and had moved back to his own residence. Before she could enter, Hidden Garda hurriedly ran over from another street. Without waiting for Shisheng to ask, Secret Garda rattled on. "Your Highness, something happened. Young Master Qi insisted on chopping people on the street. We couldn't stop him." Shisheng. Why was he chopping people on the street? Shisheng waved his hand. "Go, go, go. Let's see what this idiot is up to." When they arrived at the place Secret Garda mentioned, it was surrounded by people. "Prince Rong is here. Make way, make way. Those in front, make way." Secret Garda shouted, and the people in front took the initiative to make way. The girls in the crowd immediately became excited. "Prince Rong. Oh my God, it's Prince Rong." "Ah, where's Prince Rong?" Shisheng walked in amidst the girls' affectionate care. In the encirclement, Dan Ming was kneeling on the ground while Qi Yuan looked at him with a dark expression. The secret guard stood between the two of them, and the atmosphere was exceptionally strange. "Madam, help." When Dan Ming saw Shisheng, it was as if he had seen his savior. Ignoring Qi Yuan's abuse of power, he ran to Shisheng's side. Then, perhaps realizing that he had misspoken, He loudly covered it up. Your Highness Prince Rong, if you didn't come, I would have gone to meet my ancestors. Shisheng's mouth twitched. What did you do? I didn't do anything. I only said a few words to His Majesty, and he suddenly wanted to chop me up. You know, His Majesty never cares about the occasion or place when he loses his temper. Dan Ming was very careful when he said this, afraid that Qi Yuan would hear him from next door. If it were Qi Yao, he would have been dragged down and beheaded long ago. His Majesty is so scary. Qi Yuan's temper really didn't care about the occasion or place. He flipped out on a whim, faster than flipping a book. Shisheng walked to Qi Yuan's side and naturally held his hand. Qi Yuan shrank back, then held her hand back. His voice was full of biting cold murderous intent. Help me chop him up. Shisheng pointed at two of his secret guards. You two drag him down and chop him up. What fairness and justice! How could it be more important than his wife's happiness? Dan Ming was dumbstruck. What was going on? Why did he still want to be chopped up? He didn't want to be chopped up, okay? Prince Rong, you're helping the tyrant. The secret guards had long found Dan Ming an eyesore. At this moment, they surrounded him. We've offended General Dan. Men, protect me. Dan Ming got up from the ground and quickly rushed into the crowd, causing a group of people to fly and dogs to jump. The secret guards chased after Dan Ming, but the crowd didn't disperse at all. Seeing two big men holding hands should have been a strange feeling. However, it was a different story when two men with better-than-average looks were holding hands. That's why it was said that looks determined everything. This was a world dominated by looks. Prince Rong is so amazing, even the Emperor of Qi Yao was taken in as a pet boy. I wonder if the Rong estate is still lacking people. I'm willing to serve tea. What pet boy? Prince Rong said that young Master Qi will be the future princess consort of the Rong estate. When did he say that? The girls were confused. Last time, when young Master Qi was forced to confess. Woo, it's a pity that I'm not a man. Right now, everyone in the capital knew that the person Shisheng doted on the most was the Emperor of Qi Yao. Naturally, there were those who supported and those who disagreed. Public morals are degenerating day by day. There really are all kinds of people. Two grown men pulling each other on the street. What a scandal, how shameful. Blah blah blah. Shisheng ignored these people. There were millions of people in the world. She could block one person's mouth, but how could she block millions of people's mouths? They wouldn't lose anything if they said a word, and in the end, they had no choice but to listen to her. Shisheng led Qi Yuan out of the encirclement and went to a nearby tea house. Shisheng didn't let go of him and led him upstairs, saying, "Why are you still dressed like this when you're out?" Qi Yuan coldly snorted. "What do I wear if not the imperial robe?" Shisheng suddenly leaned in close and smiled maliciously. "You don't have to wear it." Qi Yuan had been teased too many times, and immediately understood the meaning of her words. His expression became unnatural. Chapter 1203. After Jing Chen gave the money, the crowd gradually dispersed. Shisheng was standing at the back of the crowd. Now that the crowd had dispersed, Jing Chen's bodyguard saw him at a glance. "Young master, it's Prince Rong." The bodyguard almost gnashed his teeth as he spoke. That time at the inn, it was this person who had been so deranged. Jing Chen followed the bodyguard's line of sight, and happened to meet Shisheng's gaze. If he was said to have a pure heart and few desires, then this young man in front of him was someone who ignored everything. He didn't put anything in his eyes, as if he was isolated from the 7 emotions and 6 desires. How could he have such a state of mind at such a young age? Jing Chen gathered his thoughts and nodded slightly. Prince Rong. It wasn't respectful, but it wasn't contemptuous either. No one could find fault with it. Shisheng said with a faint smile. Young Master Jing Chen, people's hearts are sinister. You have to be careful. People are inherently good. Prince Rong, you have to believe in these 4 words. People are fickle. Young Master Jing Chen, you have to believe in these 4 words. Shisheng used a few different words to return Jing Chen's words. Jing Chen was puzzled. Why does Prince Rong resist the kindness of others? Shisheng curled his lips. Because they have never shown me kindness. How does Prince Rong know if others have shown you kindness? Jingchen could be considered to have seen countless people, but he didn't dare to judge whether a person was good or evil at a glance. When you have seen many people. Shisheng paused. You will know that when the forest is big, there are all kinds of people. Jingchen was speechless. His words don't make sense. Young Master Jingchen, it's really you. I thought I was mistaken. Lu Zian ran over from the side, her face full of surprise. But when she saw Shisheng from the corner of her eyes, her surprise turned into shock. Prince Rong, why are you here? Her tone was as if Shisheng's presence here was a great sin. Shisheng raised his chin. What does this prince's presence have to do with Miss Lu? Lu Zian didn't dare to go against Shisheng right now, so she lowered her stance. Prince Rong, please don't misunderstand. I was just asking casually. I didn't mean anything else. Naturally, Lu Zian hated Shisheng from the bottom of her heart. Back then, Shisheng didn't give her any face at all and almost killed her. But now, in the entire glorious Crimson Empire, Prince Rong was the most respected person besides the new emperor. Moreover, she was the same as her, from a different world. Why would she offend her in front of so many people? The female lead suddenly showed weakness. Shisheng didn't know what to do. Why didn't you attack me? If you don't diss me, how can I cause trouble? Shisheng was a little bored if the female lead didn't stir up trouble. I'm leaving. There wasn't much to see between the female lead and the supporting male lead. Why don't we invite the male lead over to take a look? No, if there was nothing to see, wouldn't that be a waste of the male lead's time? Shisheng was about to give up on the idea when he suddenly saw the two girls sneaking around. She tried her best to search through the original Chu Luo's memories, and finally found a match, Chu Luo's admirer. It seemed to be the daughter of a high-ranking official. She was a supporting female lead who was quite good at causing trouble. Of course, her ending was also very tragic. The master and servant obviously saw Lu Zian and Jingchen. Damn, the supporting female lead was going to tear them apart. Shisheng's enthusiasm for watching the show rebounded. The two girls followed Lu Zian and Jingchen. Shisheng followed behind the two girls. She had used an invisibility talisman. Otherwise, the girls around her would have screamed. She had no choice. She was also a celebrity now. Lu Zian and Jingchen were chatting. The two of them first walked on the street for a while. Lu Zian had probably suggested eating, so the two of them went to a restaurant. The girl with exquisite makeup stared at the restaurant with an unfriendly expression and gritted her teeth. Lu Zian, this shameless woman. She's seducing the Luo King and getting so close to another man. Miss, don't be angry, the maidservant persuaded softly. How can I not be angry? The girl scolded. She was a good match for the Luo King, but it was that B***tch Lu Zian who seduced the Luo King all day. The maidservant's eyes darted around, and she leaned close to the girl's ear. Miss Lu Zian is meeting a man in private. Why don't we? This isn't good, right? The girl hesitated and twisted the handkerchief in her hand into a ball. Miss, if this succeeds, Lu Zian won't have the chance to marry the Luo King. Then won't the position of Princess Luo be yours? The girl was conflicted for a while. In the end, her ideal of marrying Chu Luo defeated her conscience. Go ahead and do it. Be careful. I'll invite the Luo King. The maidservant nodded and promised that no one would find out. Shisheng, who was standing at the side. Young ladies these days were really capable. Shisheng thought about the plot. There seemed to be such a scene in the plot, but it wasn't described in detail. He only knew that in the end Lu Zian was fine, but this girl's family suffered. It was obvious that the male lead had appeared and saved the female lead. Shisheng thought for a while, and went to the Luo palace before the girl did. Chu Luo didn't expect Shisheng to come looking for her. She didn't know what was going on, but since he was already here, he couldn't possibly chase him out, right? Chu Luo didn't even bother with the pleasantries, and went straight to the point. Prince Rong, what's the matter? Shisheng sat in the main seat and supported his chin with his hand. He said calmly, nothing. I'm just here to see how the Luo King is doing. Chu Luo frowned. You don't have to worry about me, Prince Rong. I'm doing very well. Chu Luo held military power in her hands. Even the new emperor had to be wary. During the chaos, he hadn't been in the capital and had nothing to do with it. He was indeed doing well. Shisheng smiled ambiguously. Is that so? Then the atmosphere turned cold. Chu Luo looked at the young man drinking tea and frowned. Prince Rong, did you come to look for me to ask if I'm doing well? I'm here to drink tea. You don't mind, right? Chu Luo felt even more complicated. She didn't understand what he was trying to do. The two of them sat there. The people outside came to report a few times that someone was looking for him, but the Luo king ignored them. Right now, he only wanted to figure out why Prince Rong was here. Shisheng drank 3 cups of tea. Calculating the time, it should be about time. Only then did he stand up and look at Chu Luo. He didn't hide the malice on his face. I believe the Luo king won't be having a good time soon. Seeing that you're not having a good time makes this prince happy. Chu Luo stood up and looked at him coldly. What do you mean, Prince Rong? A beauty has a date. You should hurry up and go, Prince Rong. There might be a good show to watch. Let's make things clear first. This prince is only stalling for time. I didn't do anything else. When the time comes, don't throw all the dirty water at me. Shisheng's words were straightforward. If Chu Luo couldn't tell that there was something wrong with them, he wouldn't be the male lead. Chu Luo's mind raced. He suddenly turned around and left. After asking where the person who was looking for him was, he ran straight over. The host's posture of dismantling a couple is getting stranger and stranger. How dare you be so impudent when you're stalling for time? When the time comes, they'll hate you to death. Shisheng said smugly. I like it when they know that I did it, but they can't do anything to me. When others did something bad, they wanted nothing more than to cover it up and not let anyone know. His host, on the other hand, wanted the whole world to know that it was I who did it. What can you do to me? She suddenly felt glad that those people were NPCs. Pooey. This wasn't a game. NPC my ass. Please vote. Chapter 1204. How could Shisheng not watch this good show? Shisheng was a step slower. When she arrived, the restaurant was already surrounded by Chu Luo's men. Standing in the crowd, she couldn't see what was going on inside, but there were sounds of fighting coming from inside. It was probably a success. Not long after, Chu Luo came out with a gloomy face. There was no trace of Lu Ziyan. His gaze swept across Shisheng and paused for a few seconds. Suddenly, he drew the knife of a guard beside him and slashed at him. Shisheng, D*MN. Male lead, be reasonable. I only went to drink tea and didn't do anything to Lu Ziyan. What's the use of killing I? You came knocking on my door yourself. It would be a waste not to hit you. Everyone only saw the Luo king suddenly charge at Rong Wang, but what happened next exceeded their expectations. Why was King Luo the one who was beaten up in the end? Shisheng picked Chu Luo up from the ground. Prince Luo, didn't I tell you that I was at most stalling for time? It's a little too much for you to blame all your hatred on me. Chu Luo's eyes were red as she squeezed out a sentence from between her teeth. Since you knew, why did you stop me? Shisheng sneered. Would you stop your enemy from being harmed? I'm not as magnanimous as Prince Luo. Holy Mary, that was the female lead's job. It had nothing to do with her, the villain. Chu Luo couldn't refute Shisheng's words. Lu Ziyan had touched the Sima family. To King Rong, she was an enemy. If a person wasn't ruthless to their enemy, it would be difficult for them to survive. Shisheng let go of Chu Luo, stood up, and looked in the direction of the inn. There should be no chance for the female lead and male lead now, right? The female lead had already slept with the second male lead. If the male lead still wanted her, then she would just tear them apart again. In the restaurant, Lu Ziyan was lying on the soft couch in a daze. She kept moaning, looking very seductive. Jingchen was only wearing a single layer of clothing as he stood in front of her. A strange expression appeared on his usually quiet and peaceful face. In the plot, Jingchen only liked Lu Ziyan. In the end, he didn't get Lu Ziyan. It was because he didn't get her that Lu Ziyan was his white moonlight. But at this moment, before he fell in love with Lu Ziyan, he had already rolled in the sheets with her. Although he knew that he had been drugged, he still felt guilty. His feelings for Lu Ziyan, which he had yet to realize, were suppressed. When Lu Ziyan woke up, it was already night time. She was transferred to an inn. Clean Dust was sitting on the edge of the bed with neat clothes. She was confused at first, then her expression changed abruptly. "We." Qing Chen was silent for a few seconds before he solemnly promised, "I will take responsibility." Lu Ziyan's chest heaved up and down as she clenched her fists. "Who drugged him?" Jing Chen glanced at her and lowered his eyes. "Minister Zhang's daughter." At that time, that lady had come with Chu Luo. When Chu Luo flared up, that lady had confessed. It was unknown where that maidservant had gotten the medicine from. It was colorless and odorless. She had originally planned to use it on Chu Luo. Who knew that she would meet Lu Ziyan and Clean Dust today? It came in handy. Lu Ziyan's medical skills were outstanding, but this medicine was colorless and odorless. She didn't notice it at all, so she fell for it. In the words of the Shisheng, it was all a trap. No matter how powerful the female lead was, she would still fall for it. Minister Zhang's daughter had previously tried to trip Lu Ziyan up because of her relationship with Chu Luo, but Lu Ziyan didn't think much of it. She was a modern person. How could she lose to an ancient person? Who knew that she would suffer such a huge setback today? Who else knows about this? At that time, Lu Ziyan was in a daze. She only remembered that someone had come, but she really didn't know who it was. King Luo. King Rong. Clean Dust slowly spat out two people. Lu Ziyan's pupils widened. The King Luo knew? How could that be? That made sense. That person from the Zhang family had put in so much effort. How could he not let the King Luo see it? Lu Ziyan lifted the blanket and got off the bed. She had to explain it to the King Luo. As soon as her feet touched the ground, she felt dizzy and her vision turned black. Clean Dust immediately supported her. "Miss Lu." Lu Ziyan leaned against Clean Dust and gripped his arm tightly. What's wrong with my body?" She couldn't exert any strength. Clean Dust carried her back to the bed and said hesitantly, "Don't worry about the aftereffects after being with me. You'll be fine. Your body will only be weak for a few days, but after that, your body will benefit." Lu Ziyan looked at Clean Dust in confusion. Clean Dust didn't explain further. In their sect, they couldn't marry for the rest of their lives. This was because once they did that, their cultivation would regress and the woman's body would get better and better. After Shisheng beat Chu Luo up, he returned to his residence. In the middle of the night, someone suddenly knocked on the door. Shisheng got up from the bed in frustration. "Why are you knocking? It's the middle of the night. Can't you let me sleep? Why? Who wants to rebel again?" The servant outside the door was shocked by Shisheng and knelt down. "Your Highness, there's news from the city gate that young Master Qi's convoy is back. They want you to hurry over." Shisheng. She pinched her thigh. This wasn't a dream. They had just left during the day. Why were they back at night? "Prepare the horses." The city gates closed at sunset and wouldn't be opened easily. At this moment, Qi Yuan's convoy had suddenly returned. The people at the city gates didn't dare to open the gates without permission, so they could only invite Shisheng over. Shisheng ordered someone to open the city gates and rode to the convoy. Secret Guard A and B immediately went forward to report. "Your Highness, young Master Qi suddenly turned back halfway. Please go and take a look. Young Master Qi doesn't seem to be in a good mood." Shisheng glanced at the convoy. Dan Ming was gone. She jumped off her horse and walked towards the carriage. She got into the carriage and instructed the people outside, "Let's go back." It was very dark in the carriage. Shisheng could only see a black shadow sitting in the corner. She kicked away the mess in the carriage and sat beside him. "What's wrong? Why are you throwing a tantrum?" Qi Yuan didn't say anything. He reached out to touch Shisheng's hand and grabbed it tightly. He was so strong that Shisheng felt like he was going to break his hand. "You can't bear to part with me?" There was silence and no response. "If you don't want me to leave, then I won't leave. When I'm done here, I'll accompany you back. How about it?" There was still no response. Shisheng. Was he a mute? Qi Yuan didn't say a word as the carriage traveled from the city gates to the Rong estate. He didn't move even when the carriage stopped. Let's go. Shisheng asked patiently. Shisheng tried to persuade Qi Yuan, but Qi Yuan remained unmoved. Shisheng was furious and roughly carried him out of the carriage. The people outside all lowered their heads and pretended not to see anything. Shisheng kicked open the door, carried him into the room, and threw him on the bed. She pinched his chin and forced him to look at her. What's wrong with you? Speak. Qi Yuan couldn't avoid her gaze. He could only look at her. He moved his chin, which was a little uncomfortable, and squeezed out 3 words. I don't know. He said it very confidently. Shisheng. Chapter 1205. When Shisheng released him, Qi Yuan immediately pushed her away and sat up on the bed. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just don't want to leave you, he said in a low voice. He said the last few words very softly, as if he was murmuring them to himself. Shisheng half knelt on the bed and tilted her head to look at his back. Her lips parted slightly. Then don't leave me. I can give you whatever you want. Familiar images flooded his mind. Many people seemed to have said this to him before. His intuition told him that they were all the same person. And that person was right in front of him. Qi Yuan got up and said with a trembling voice, I'm going back to my room. Shisheng pulled him and looked up slightly. Sleep with me. Qi Yuan turned around. Before he could refuse, Shisheng said, I miss you. Qi Yuan struggled for a while. I'm not ready yet. Qi Yuan's mind went blank. How could 2 men do that kind of thing? As an emperor, he naturally knew about sex, but that was based on the relationship between a man and a woman. But now they were 2 men, okay? Okay, I won't touch you when you're ready, Shisheng promised seriously. Qi Yuan continued to struggle for a while, but gave up in the end. I want to take a bath. Shisheng smiled and got off the bed. Wait a moment. Are you hungry? Do you want to eat something? Qi Yuan nodded absent-mindedly. Shisheng left him in the room and went out to ask the servants to prepare hot water and food. The servants quickly brought the hot water. Seeing that Shisheng had no intention of going out, Qi Yuan was a little embarrassed. I want to take a bath. Okay, I'll help you, Shisheng said happily. Qi Yuan was speechless. I meant for you to go out. Shisheng refused to go out and insisted on washing Qi Yuan. She took off his clothes one by one until only his underwear was left. Qi Yuan grabbed Shisheng's hand. I'll do it myself. Then, without waiting for Shisheng to react, he quickly took off his clothes and dived into the water. Do you have to? Shisheng rolled her eyes. You'll have to see it in the future anyway. Qi Yuan's face instantly turned red. To be fair, I'll show you too. Shisheng tugged at his belt and was about to take it off. Prince Rong. Qi Yuan raised his voice slightly. The blush on his face made him look extremely adorable. Ha ha ha, look at how scared you are. Shisheng let go of her hand. I won't tease you anymore. Hurry up and wash up. I'll go get your clothes. Shisheng had prepared many clothes for Qi Yuan, but Qi Yuan liked to wear his dragon robe. He changed out of the dragon robe and washed it. He didn't go out for the whole day. He would only come out when the dragon robe was dry enough to wear. I should prepare a few more dragon robes in the future. She wondered if Grandpa would beat her to death. When the Shisheng came back with the clothes, he bumped into the servant who was delivering the clothes. Your Highness. Give it to me. Yes. The Shisheng came in with the gifts, and the servants who delivered the gifts looked at each other. Your Highness is so nice to young Master Qi. Young Master Qi is so lucky to have met our Highness. Even if he was a man, it was still enviable. Shoo, let's go quickly. If His Highness hears that we are still outside, he will yell at us again. Qi Yuan put on the clothes brought by the Shisheng. They fit him very well. No one had taken his measurements before, so he really didn't know who did it for her. His hair was wet and stuck to his body. It was a little cold at night. Here, it's so late. Have some porridge. You can eat something better tomorrow. The Shisheng put the porridge on the table and pushed it towards him. Qi Yuan wasn't really hungry. His mind was a little confused just now. When she asked him if he was hungry, he said yes. Qi Yuan sat down and drank 2 mouthfuls of the porridge. The Shisheng went behind him and wiped his hair with a dry handkerchief. Her movements were gentle and practiced, as if she had done it many times before. He was a prince. How could he wipe someone else's hair? Have you done this to someone else before? Qi Yuan almost bit his tongue. How could he ask such a stupid question? That person definitely wasn't him. No, it's just you. The Shisheng's voice came from the top of his head. Her voice was a little different from usual. It was less clear and more gentle. Qi Yuan suddenly felt a little strange. Details that he didn't pay attention to before suddenly came to mind. He suddenly turned around and reached out to touch the Shisheng's chest. It was soft, the Shisheng. Qi Yuan. Their posture was a little indescribable. Qi Yuan stared at the Shisheng. If we say that my hand slipped just now, would Prince Rong believe it? The Shisheng lowered her head, a faint smile rippling in her eyes. Is your Majesty satisfied with what you touched? Only then did Qi Yuan react. He hurriedly retracted his hand and looked at her coldly. You're a woman? I didn't say I was a man. The Shisheng supported herself with the table behind her and pulled Qi Yuan into her arms. Does your Majesty dislike me just because I'm a woman? The aura that Qi Yuan had gathered was instantly extinguished. No. Just a second ago, he was still thinking about how they were going to have sex. In the next second, she turned into a woman. Wasn't this a huge shock? Qi Yuan realized that he didn't really care about whether she was a man or a woman. As long as it was her, it was fine. Are you full? The corners of the Shisheng's mouth curled up slightly. Qi Yuan nodded. The Shisheng reached out and lifted his chin. Her gentle voice was like a vine that wrapped around his heart. Then let's start our night exercise. When Qi Yuan woke up the next day, he was the only one in bed. His clothes were strewn all over the floor, and the room was filled with a special smell. He lifted the blanket to take a look. Suddenly, he blushed as the memories of last night came flooding back. He hugged the blanket and sat for a while, waiting for the Shisheng to return. He didn't know why, but deep down he felt that she would definitely return. She wouldn't let him stay in the room like this. Sure enough, the door was pushed open not long after. A slender youth walked in under the sunlight, a satisfied smile on his face. You're awake? The Shisheng picked up the clothes on the floor and threw them aside. Your body is too weak. You have to train more in the future. The blush that had just faded from Qi Yuan's face crept back up. He was a little angry. Prince Rong might be disappointed. This is all we can do. He was a little angry, but his face was still red. The Shisheng's heart was rippling. Aya so cute. As expected, he still liked the shy Feng Ci after sleeping with him. So cute. The Shisheng couldn't hold back and pounced on him again. Why did you dress up as a man? Qi Yuan held the Shisheng in his arms. She would definitely look good in women's clothes. Qi Yuan felt proud that he was the most beautiful girl in the world. Isn't there only so much in a place like the palace? Fighting for favor, fighting for power, fighting for the throne. Qi Yuan grew up in the palace and naturally understood these things. He changed the topic naturally. Then does Prince Rong intend to marry into my Qi Yao as a man? Why can't you marry into my family? I'm a man. In the eyes of outsiders, I'm also a man. The Shisheng leaned closer to Qi Yuan. Moreover, they all know that I dote on you. In the future, I want to take you as my consort. Qi Yuan was speechless. #today's vote for longevity flowers #vote, vote, vote. Vote, 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 vote. Chapter 1206. As soon as Lu Ziyan recovered, she went to look for Chu Luo, but Chu Luo didn't want to see her. She lingered outside the Luo palace for a few days, but didn't see anyone. As a responsible man, although Jingchen didn't follow Lu Ziyan all the time, he would come to pick her up every day. Rumble. The sound of thunder resounded through the sky. In the blink of an eye, bean-sized raindrops fell. Lu Ziyan stood in the rain and stared in the direction of the Luo palace. The Luo king won't see you. Go back. Jingchen's voice was a little fragmented by the sound of the rain. Lu Ziyan didn't move. Jingchen stood still for a moment before reaching out to pull Lu Ziyan. As soon as his hand touched Lu Ziyan, she pushed him away. Get lost. If it weren't for him, why would Chu Luo be unwilling to even see her? If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have become like this. Jingchen staggered from the push. The guard standing in the distance rushed forward and said angrily, "Young master, why do you care about her? This wasn't your fault to begin with. Miss Liu, please understand that our young master is also a victim." At that time, she was the one who suddenly appeared on the street and asked to treat the young master to a meal. The young master didn't even say anything, yet she still had the cheek to throw a tantrum at him. Jingchen shook his head at the guard and said good-naturedly, "Miss Liu, since things have come to this, get lost." Lu Zian pointed in a direction with a trace of hatred in her expression. "Get lost. I don't want to see you." Jingchen shook his head helplessly. In the end, he didn't say anything and left with his men. Compared to Lu Zian's confusing and complicated situation, Shi Sheng's side was simply displaying their affection. The servants of Prince Rong's residence wished they could poke their eyes out. Every day, they saw their prince and the emperor of another country showing off their affection. At the same time, there were more rumors outside. However, this didn't stop Shi Sheng from displaying their affection on a large scale and poisoning the eyes of the world. "Your Highness, young Master Qi, we're here." Shi Sheng rubbed his eyes and sat up. He glanced at Qi Yuan before lifting the curtain and getting out of the carriage. She stretched out her hand and Qi Yuan helped her out of the carriage. Shi Sheng naturally held his waist to stabilize his body. "I'm not that delicate." Qi Yuan was a little annoyed. Why did she always think of him as a weak person? "But I want to pamper you, ah." Shi Sheng answered in all seriousness. Qi Yuan was speechless. If he wanted to spoil her, so be it. In any case, he was already used to it. "Look, it's Prince Rong." As soon as the Shi Sheng got out of the car, a young girl exclaimed in a low voice. Qi Yuan looked at those people impatiently and dragged the Shi Sheng inside. Why should his woman be seen by others? If this was Red Planet, he would have been dragged out and beheaded long ago. Shi Sheng chuckled. "Are you jealous?" "No." Qi Yuan coldly snorted. He wasn't jealous. "You won't lose anything if you admit it," Shi Sheng teased. This brat was really arrogant. Qi Yuan continued to snort. The two of them were here for a meal because Qi Yuan said that he was tired of the food made by the prince's residence. To Shi Sheng, as long as he was obedient, he would even get him the stars in the sky, let alone a meal. After entering the restaurant's private room, Qi Yuan sat beside Shi Sheng and twirled his teacup. "When are you coming back to Red Planet with me?" Shi Sheng raised his eyebrows. "Why? Is it urgent?" Qi Yuan's hand paused, his gaze returning to its usual indifference. "If we don't go back soon, they'll probably rebel." Shi Sheng narrowed his eyes and smiled. "Then let them rebel. When we get back, I'll help you rebel." Qi Yuan glanced at him. After the previous rebellion, he didn't think that Shi Sheng was joking. He knew that he had the ability to do so. Qi Yuan suddenly reached out and pinched Shi Sheng's chin. He leaned in and kissed him for a moment before saying in a low voice, "I like you." "Why are you suddenly confessing?" Shi Sheng glared at him. "I want you to know," Qi Yuan said confidently. Shi Sheng looked at him with a faint smile. Qi Yuan had never seen such gentleness in his eyes before. It was a gentleness that was only shown to him. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Qi Yuan let go of Shi Sheng and looked away unnaturally. The people serving the dishes came in one after another. Qi Yuan lowered his head and ate, ignoring Shi Sheng. Shi Sheng didn't move from her seat, merely looking at him thoughtfully. "Why are you looking at me?" Qi Yuan felt uncomfortable being stared at while eating by someone he liked. "You're good looking. Who else am I supposed to look at?" If she really looked at someone else, he would call for someone to chop off her head. "Qi Yuan." Crash. Qi Yuan frowned and looked at the wall beside him. The sound came from next door. The sound of footsteps could be heard outside. It was very messy. When the person ran to their door, he suddenly shouted in a sharp voice, "I said it's none of your business. Get lost." Shi Sheng was naturally familiar with this voice. It was Lu Zian. The argument outside became louder and louder. Shi Sheng opened the door and went out. Lu Zian and Jingchen had already arrived at the hall. The two of them kept pulling and tugging. I have nothing to do with you. Can you not appear in front of me again? Lu Ziyan was mentally and physically exhausted, and her voice was a little sorrowful. Miss Lu, how can I not be responsible for what I did? Jingchen was a stubborn person. I don't need it. Don't you understand? No. Need. I want it. Lu Ziyan was practically gnashing her teeth as she said this. She really didn't need him to be responsible. Prince, shall we go somewhere else? A delicate voice sounded from outside the door. Lu Ziyan seemed to have sensed something and looked up abruptly. Chu Luo, whom she hadn't seen for many days, was standing outside the door. Beside him was a good-looking girl. Standing beside him, they looked like a golden couple. Prince Luo. Lu Ziyan murmured and stared blankly at the person outside the door. In love, whoever compromised first would lose. Although this wasn't completely accurate, it applied to most people. In the plot, Chu Luo was the one who compromised first, and it was the plot that was messed up by Shi Sheng. It was Lu Ziyan who saw her heart clearly first. Chu Luo glanced at Lu Ziyan and Jingchen's hands and turned to leave. The girl immediately followed. Prince Luo. Lu Ziyan broke free from Jingchen and chased after him. It was another cat fight. Of course, Shi Sheng didn't see it. When he came out after serving Qi Yuan, he didn't even see a shadow. Shi Sheng had heard this gossip from his servants. After being mocked by Chu Luo, Lu Ziyan fainted from anger. After Jingchen brought her away, it wasn't long before news spread that she was pregnant. She was pregnant before marriage. Such a huge piece of gossip spread throughout the streets and alleys in the blink of an eye. Your Highness, whose child do you think it is? The servant asked Shi Sheng, who was squatting beside them curiously. Shi Sheng munched on melon seeds. It's not mine anyway. Your Highness. Can we still chat? Lu Ziyan has always been targeting Your Highness. Now that she's suffering retribution, she deserves it. Shi Sheng smiled but didn't say anything. What retribution? I was the one who added fuel to the fire, okay? Secret Guard A appeared out of nowhere. Your Highness, young Master Qi is looking for you. Why are you squatting here? You're a prince. Can't you act like one? Why are you squatting with them and gossiping? The corners of Shi Sheng's mouth twitched. Why were Secret Guards so talkative now? Secret Guard A scolded the servants again. What are you looking at? Hurry up and do your work. The servants were very innocent. They had been chatting here just now and realized that their prince was squatting behind them. What could they do? Chapter 1207. Lu Ziyan was pregnant, and Jingchen came to propose marriage the next day. Surprisingly, Lu Ziyan did not object this time, and agreed to Jingchen's request. Because she was pregnant, the wedding preparations were rushed. Shi Sheng went to take a look. The scene was not grand, but it was thoughtful. Jingchen, the supporting male lead, was very good. After the wedding, Lu Ziyan's news stopped. Your Highness, it's not good. Secret Guard A rushed in. His voice could probably be heard by the entire palace. Who's not good? Shi Sheng was speechless. She had shouted so loudly that people who didn't know better would think that she was the one who was not good. Hidden Guard A pointed in the direction of the city gate. Dan Ming has brought an army to declare war. He wants Her Highness to hand over young Master Qi. Qi Yao hasn't rebelled yet? Shi Sheng asked subconsciously. Secret Guard A. What's with your regretful tone? Qi Yao had the astute Prime Minister Su and the Dan family, who would dare to rebel. Do you think everyone is as awesome as you? Just as Secret Guard A finished his report, someone from the palace arrived. It was her cheap uncle, the current Crown Prince. Originally, the title of Crown Prince was supposed to be bestowed to Shi Sheng, but Shi Sheng was not interested, so the title fell to Sima Yang. Sima Yang was here to ask her what she should do. It was definitely impossible to fight Qi Yao. Qi Yao's military strength was much stronger than Northern Liang's. If they fought, only Northern Liang would be at a disadvantage. Most importantly, most of Northern Liang's soldiers were under Chu Luo's control. They still had to rely on her to lead the troops into battle. Sima Yang's intention was to return him first. If she really liked him, she would first regain her identity as a woman, and then marry him in a political marriage. To be able to reach a peace treaty with Baelyang was the best for Baelyang and the people of the world. We agree with the Crown Prince, Qi Yuan said in all seriousness. Shut up. Shisheng glared at him. Qi Yuan pursed his lips and didn't say anything else. Sima Yang was surprised. Since she was so obedient, it seemed like he didn't have to worry about her being bullied in the future. Although Shisheng was a little reluctant, she finally agreed to return to her female identity and marry Qi Yao as a princess. Her hidden mission was not to marry Qi Yuan, but to fulfill the 100-year alliance between Baelyang and Qi Yao. Qi Yuan represented Red Radiance and signed a 100-year alliance with Northern Liang. Within 100 years, the two countries would not go to war. Qi Yuan sent someone to send a message to Dan Ming, asking him to prepare the betrothal gifts. When Dan Ming received the news, he was in a bad mood. He had been forced by the old master to ask for the bride, but he had failed to do so. Now he had to pay the betrothal gifts. However, he had no choice but to give the betrothal gift. If he did not give it to His Majesty, he would not be able to get it back. How was this a betrothal gift? This was a ransom. He had already anticipated that the narration of His Majesty being recorded in the annals of history would definitely not be anything good. Dan Ming left the army at the border and hurried back to prepare the betrothal gifts. According to Qi Yuan's instructions, he had almost emptied the treasury of all the good things. The ministers of the imperial court were filled with grief and hatred, wishing they could immediately rebel in front of Qi Yuan. This back-and-forth delay took another few months. Shisheng heard that Lu Xian's child was gone, and the culprit was Chu Luo's new lover. Chu Luo didn't say anything about this. She didn't protect her new lover or seek justice for Lu Xian. After Lu Xian lost her child, her intelligence suddenly returned, and she punished the person who had caused her child's death. Lu Xian's actions touched Chu Luo's reverse scale. From then on, Chu Luo and her relationship became incompatible. Lu Xian felt that if Chu Luo hadn't indulged her, her child wouldn't have been gone. Although she resisted pure dust, the child was innocent. On the 8th day of the 7th month, the betrothal gifts kept entering the city gates, attracting the attention of the common people. The new emperor had already publicly announced Shisheng's identity as a woman. Now that the old dynasty was gone, whether or not Shisheng was a woman, he naturally wasn't guilty of deceiving the emperor. Many young ladies' hearts were broken. However, when they found out that Shisheng was a girl, the rumors about the two of them in the imperial city disappeared. At the same time, the 7-star passion poison in Chu Luo's body acted up. Chu Luo lay on the bed, feeling a little dizzy. The people around her came and went. The room gradually quietened down, and there seemed to be someone standing beside her. Chu Luo turned her head and looked at the person standing beside her. Her vision was a little blurry. The corners of his mouth twitched, and his voice seemed to be stuck in his throat. After a while he said, "What are you doing here?" Lu Xian looked at him indifferently. "I can save you." "No need. I didn't say I wanted to save you." Lu Xian sneered. Back then, when her child had been miscarried, he had stood by the side and watched. He only needed to give the order, and her child wouldn't have been gone. "Then why are you here?" Chu Luo's voice was hoarse. "Are you here to laugh at me? Now that you've seen enough, get lost." "Chu Luo, I'll wait for the moment you beg me." Lu Xian left the room after saying this. Lu Xian didn't wait for Chu Luo to beg her. What she waited for was for Chu Luo's men to capture her. Perhaps Chu Luo didn't know, or perhaps she did. Lu Xian didn't know. They asked Lu Xian to tell them the method to cure the 7-star passion poison. How would Lu Xian know that she was just lying to Chu Luo back then? She wanted him to experience the pain of having hope in his heart but despair in the end. Lu Xian didn't speak, so those people tortured her. In the end, Lu Xian was almost on her last breath. Lu Xian wondered why she had ended up like this. Everything had been going smoothly before, but ever since, yes, that woman. Ever since she came, everything about her had become abnormal. "Xian, Xian, wake up." A familiar voice sounded in her ears. Lu Xian's slightly dazed consciousness gradually returned to her. She looked at the person in front of her, and her pupils suddenly constricted. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here to save you. Don't be afraid." Qing Chen released the rope on her body. I'll take you out now. Qing Chen picked her up and took her out of the dungeon. However, as soon as the two of them walked out of the dungeon, they were surrounded. Young Master Qing Chen, we've been waiting for a long time. The leader looked at Qing Chen. Qing Chen didn't seem surprised. I can go with you, but you have to let Xian go. Sure. The man chuckled. What are you talking about? Lu Xian grabbed Qing Chen's collar and widened her eyes. Why did you agree to them? Qing Chen patted her lightly and looked at the man. I want to send Xian away first. Young Master Qing Chen, your request is a little difficult for me. Since I've agreed, I won't go back on my word. Send her to a safe place and I'll follow you. The man hesitated for a moment before finally nodding. Then we'll do as young Master Qing Chen says. However, young Master Qing Chen, you have to understand that if you go back on your word, Miss Lu won't have a good ending either. Qing Chen was going to die. She didn't want to kill him. After all, his name was so nice. However, she thought that if the Shisheng interfered, it wouldn't be in line with her character, so Qing Chen could go in peace. Chapter 1208. Jing Chen sent Lu Ziyan out of the imperial city. Someone was waiting for them outside. What do you want? Lu Ziyan's eyes were red. She grabbed Jing Chen's hand tightly. What did you promise them? Nothing, just a small favor. Go with them first. I'll be back soon. Jing Chen touched Lu Ziyan's forehead and comforted her gently. No, Lu Ziyan shook her head. How could they let her go so easily? Didn't you say you would take good care of me? You can't go. Jing Chen showed a trace of helplessness. He slid his finger to the tip of Lu Ziyan's nose. I'm sorry. Lu Ziyan smelled a very faint fragrance. She didn't have time to distinguish what it was before her consciousness began to fade. Jing Chen put her in the carriage and fed her a black pill. After making sure she swallowed it, he looked at the guard beside him. She won't remember anything when she wakes up. Let's go. Master. The guard looked sad and angry. She didn't treat you well. Why do you have to? I don't have much time left. There's nothing to worry about. Jing Chen looked into the distance. If you still treat me as your master, do as I say. Tears welled up in the guard's eyes. Finally, he gritted his teeth and drove the carriage away. The 6th day of the 8th month was a good time to get married. Shisheng was wearing a fiery red wedding dress. He stood behind the main entrance of the imperial palace. Beside him was the wedding procession. Jie, come back to see Imperial Mother more often. You have to take good care of yourself over there. Sima Hui tugged at Shisheng. Her tears couldn't stop falling. Imperial Mother, he will take good care of me. He is the Emperor of Qi Yao. You have to take good care of yourself. Don't end up like Imperial Mother. Sima Hui's words were vague, but how could Shisheng not understand? As the Emperor, Qi Yuan should have a harem of 3,000 beauties. Imperial Mother, don't worry. If he dares to have other women, I will chop him up. Sima Hui was stunned. This daughter was different from her. She wouldn't end up like her. Sima Hui's eyes showed a touch of relief. As long as she lived well, she would be happy. By the time Shisheng and the Sima clan had finished speaking, Qi Yuan's wedding procession had also arrived. The palace gates slowly opened, and a fiery red figure gradually appeared. Qi Yuan sat on his horse and looked at the people coming out of the palace gates. The corners of his mouth slowly rose. He had said that she would look the best in women's clothing. Tenli of Red Dowry welcomed her with 100 years of alliance as an oath. The wedding procession left the imperial city. The fiery red procession meandered into the distance. This was destined to be recorded in the annals of history. After exiting the city gate, Shisheng took off all the cumbersome things on his body. His neck was about to break. She changed into casual clothes and went horseback riding with Qi Yuan. Although this was against the rules, no one dared to refute Shisheng's stare. They could only pretend that they did not see it. When they were about to reach the city, Shisheng would go back and sit down. When they left the city, he would go out and ride a horse. When the team was about to reach the border, a carriage stopped by the roadside. Shisheng remembered that the person sitting outside the carriage was Jing Chen's guard. Just as Shi Sheng was wondering why his people were here, he saw the curtain of the carriage lift, revealing a familiar face. But that face was full of ignorance as she looked curiously at their convoy. "Brother Mo, what are they doing?" The guard glanced at the convoy and said coldly, "They are a marriage procession." "What's a marriage procession?" The guard impatiently pulled the curtain down. "Don't look around." Shi Sheng was a little surprised. Did the female lead lose her memory? During the night's rest, Shi Sheng asked Secret Guard A, and found out that the Luo King had recovered. But Jingchen was missing, and Lu Zian was nowhere to be found. "Your Highness, we have to be careful of the Luo King. If you leave, I'm worried that His Majesty." "This is not something I should be concerned about." Shi Sheng glanced at Secret Guard A. She had helped them conquer the country. Was she going to help them defend it? No way. Secret Guard A had a slip of the tongue. "I know my mistake." The next day, when they left the city, Shi Sheng saw Lu Zian again. Shi Sheng was sure that Lu Zian had lost her memory. All of her memories should have been gone. They seemed to be going to Red Planet as well. Sometimes their convoy was in front, sometimes behind. When they were near the border, Shi Sheng did not see them again. When the convoy reached the border, Dan Ming led the army to welcome them. Back in his own territory, Qi Yuan started beheading people at the slightest disagreement. Dan Ming came to Shi Sheng all day long to complain. "I will be beheaded by His Majesty sooner or later. Madam, can you persuade His Majesty to use a peaceful solution?" Shi Sheng flipped through his book. "If he likes you, let him behead you. Why do you care about him? If he gets angry, why don't you go and pacify him?" Dan Ming smiled ingratiatingly. "Aren't you the only one who can suppress His Majesty?" Shi Sheng glanced sideways and smirked. "As long as he's happy." Dan Ming. How scary. One His Majesty was hard enough to please. Now there was another. How was he going to live? He did not know if it was too late to cut ties with the Dan family. "Your Majesty." "Your Majesty." Salutes sounded from behind. Dan Ming immediately moved away from the side of the carriage. If Qi Yuan saw him here, he would be dragged out and beheaded. Qi Yuan walked to the front of the carriage, and his gaze landed on the book in Shi Sheng's hand. His face darkened. He reached out and took the book away, flipped into the carriage, and waved his hand to lower the curtain. He pressed Shi Sheng onto the soft couch at the back. Qi Yuan kissed her fiercely and said in a dangerous voice, "Didn't I tell you not to read those books? Who found those books for you?" Shi Sheng panted. "Dan Ming." Qi Yuan narrowed his eyes and stared at Shi Sheng's tender red lips. He pressed his lips down again, and their lips moved. The aura of the two gradually became heavy. Qi Yuan's hand reached under her clothes and traced her graceful curves. "No. No." Shi Sheng panted and pushed Qi Yuan away. "There are people outside." Qi Yuan was irritated. He hugged Shi Sheng's waist, and did not want to let go. His voice was a little seductive. "I want you." Shi Sheng tidied up his messy clothes. "As a man, you have to have self-control. Bear with it." "I can't bear it." Qi Yuan felt wronged. "Shi Sheng, if you can't bear it, then do it yourself." Shi Sheng pried his hand away and got out of the carriage. Damn it, if she continued to stay with him, she would not be able to bear it. What a torturous little vixen. Qi Yuan sat in the carriage and became even more irritated. He calmed down the heat in his body and shouted outside, "Men, call Dan Ming over for me." Dan Ming's head was not chopped off, but he was punished for no reason. What did he do? "General Dan, it's been hard on you." Secret Guard A patted Dan Ming's shoulder sympathetically. Dan Ming glared at Secret Guard A. "What do you know?" Secret Guard A looked around and moved closer to him. "Her Highness said that His Majesty punished you because you found those books for her." What the hell? Wasn't that you? General Dan, be careful with your words. If Her Highness hears you, you won't just be a scapegoat. Secret Guard A was smug. That was their Highness. Of course they had to protect them. Dan Ming was furious. He just wanted to be a general quietly. Why was it so difficult? Chapter 1209. When the citizens of Crimson Star heard that His Majesty had married a princess from Bailiang, they were all dumbfounded. Baelyang had just changed its ruler. Where did the princess come from? Later, when they heard that it was the former Princess Rong, and that she was a girl, the citizens of the imperial city boiled over. The wanted Princess Rong was actually a girl? Then didn't she come to the imperial city with a plan? She even dared to scheme against His Majesty, as expected of the big shot who played the imperial guards like a fiddle. Everyone was waiting to see her, but when the entourage arrived at Crimson Star Imperial City, Qi Yuan skipped the complicated steps and directly brought her back to the palace. Any objections? Drag her out and behead her. Since then, their Majesty was becoming more and more like a fatuous ruler. Not only did he behead people at the slightest disagreement, but those who dared to look at Shisheng or talk about her risked being beheaded as well. After Qi Yuan's wedding, he seemed to be very busy. Shisheng could only see him at night, and sometimes he would only come back after she had fallen asleep. In the imperial study, a eunuch respectfully reported, "Your Majesty, the Empress is here." The man above paused. "You don't have to report her arrival in the future." The eunuch was startled. Yes. This Empress was really favored by His Majesty. She could even enter the imperial study as she pleased. Shisheng entered the study, bringing in a gust of cold wind. The study was very warm and had a faint fragrance. Qi Yuan put down his brush and looked up at her, waving at her. Shisheng lifted her skirt and walked up the steps. Qi Yuan moved to the side to give her half the space and held her hand. "Are you cold?" "No." She had spiritual energy in her body, so how could she be cold? Qi Yuan checked her body and made sure there was nothing wrong. "Is the palace boring?" He had been a little busy recently and didn't have much time to accompany her. Shisheng propped up her chin. "I miss you." Qi Yuan tilted his head and kissed her cheek. "My beloved consort, stay here with me." "No." "Then it's settled." Qi Yuan's lips curved as he interrupted Shisheng. "Shisheng." She came to tell him that she wanted to go out. Why did she end up accompanying him here? Qi Yuan hugged Shisheng with one hand and pulled her into his embrace. Then he began to review the memorials. "Your Majesty." Shisheng twisted his body. "I want to go out. You can't go anywhere without me." What if she was kidnapped? "My dear concubine, don't move. You don't want to be here." Qi Yuan's last words were full of meaning. "Isn't there still Dan Ming? I'll go out with him." Dan Ming was fun to trick. "No way." Qi Yuan's face darkened as he refused. He would kill Dan Ming sooner or later. Shisheng. Ever since he returned to his own territory, Qi Yuan's aura had been flourishing day by day. It was as if he had not been taught a lesson for 3 days. "When I indulge you these days, you want to turn over and sing, right?" Seeing him close the memorial, Shisheng pinched his hand and slipped out of his arms. She walked to the side of the table and glared at him. "Eyes out. If you dare to say no, you'll sleep outside tonight." Qi Yuan. What was so good about sleeping outside? He wasn't there. Qi Yuan threw the brush aside and stood up from the dragon throne. His aura was imposing. "I'll go with you. It's over. Your ministers are going to impeach me again." She had been impeached several times recently. Qi Yuan was the one who did it, but in the end, she was the one who took the blame. Shisheng was also in despair. "Just kill him." Qi Yuan did not care. "Where do you want to go?" Shisheng narrowed his eyes. "It snowed a few days ago. Let's go see the snow." "Okay." Because of Qi Yao's geographical location, it always snowed first in the imperial city. At this time, the entire imperial city was covered in snow. Qi Yuan wanted to leave the palace, so Dan Ming had to accompany him. He was very unwilling to come. Although he did not have a wife to hug in the middle of winter, at least he had a heater at home. Once they were out, it was a world of ice and snow. It was unbearably cold. What is the Empress up to again? Dan Ming and secret guards A and B rode their horses and followed behind the carriage in the snow. "It's so cold." Secret Guard glanced at Dan Ming. "General Dan, you're a martial artist. How can you be so afraid of the cold?" "I'm also human. Why can't I be afraid of the cold?" The wind was blowing so hard that he was about to become retarded. Secret Guard A and B shook their heads at the same time and rode their horses to the front. Before they left, they said to Dan Ming. General Dan, don't freeze your IQ. Pay attention to your surroundings. Dan Ming stared at their backs, baffled. After a while, his stiff mind finally snapped back to reality as the question Shisheng had asked him a few days ago flashed through his mind. He caught up with secret guards A and B. Your Highness isn't trying to lure the snake out of its hole, right? Secret guard A looked serious. No, Our Highness said that we're just out to stroll in the snow. Stroll in the blood, of course. When they went up the mountain, they were ambushed. Blood seeped into the snow like blooming red plum blossoms. It was so red that it was dazzling. The ambushers obviously did not expect the other party to be prepared. They were all eliminated without any resistance. A few of them were even captured alive. Qi Yuan lifted the curtain and took a look. I thought you wanted to come out with me, but it turns out that you're here to deal with these people. It's just in passing. Shisheng waved his hand. Qi Yuan lowered the curtain and said coldly, I can deal with them. You don't have to do it. You're thinking too much. Shisheng rolled his eyes. They're reaching out to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be bothered to do it. These people were the ones that Qi Yuan had been dealing with recently. Perhaps they knew that Shisheng was Qi Yuan's favorite, so they were reaching out to her. Since they were already reaching out, it would be disrespectful if he did not show them some respect. He had to cut them down. Afraid that he would hurt Qi Yuan, Shisheng quickly said, Don't worry. I've left the big ones for you. I'm just warning them. Qi Yuan. He was worried about her, not those things. Am I just a decoration in your eyes? Qi Yuan grabbed Shisheng's collar and pinned him down. Can't you just tell me and let me help you? You're a treasure in my eyes. Shisheng blinked and said seriously. Treasures need to be protected. I treat you like a treasure and worship you like a god. Qi Yuan. Did he reincarnate into the wrong body? He accepted it quite well. What the hell was this? Qi Yuan got down from Shisheng's body and looked a little unnatural. Are we still going up the mountain? Since we're already here, there's no reason not to go. Shisheng chuckled. The scenery on the mountain was very beautiful. They could see the snow-covered imperial city and the snow-covered mountain range. It was a magnificent sight. Qi Yuan pulled Shisheng under his cloak and hugged her gently. I never thought that one day I'd be able to stand next to someone and look at the mountains and rivers. Shisheng looked up and rested his chin on Qi Yuan's chest. Are you happy? Qi Yuan's eyes drooped as bits of snow fell from his long eyelashes. He lowered his head, pressed his lips together, and gently kissed her. His voice drifted between heaven and earth. You are my tribulation, but I gladly endure it. Chapter 12:10. The Emperor of Qi Yao only doted on the Empress. All the ministers were busy trying to increase the Emperor's harem. In the end, they were either executed or exiled. Gradually, they gave up on this idea. But when the Empress did not get pregnant for a long time, the ministers started to cause trouble again. This time, the Emperor did not have to do anything. The Empress was the first to explode. The ministers in the imperial court changed wave after wave, but the situation in Qi Yao did not change. Many years later, on the official road, a carriage slowly moved towards the northern Liang imperial city. The carriage finally stopped at the Lingguang temple outside the imperial city. A woman came down from inside. She wore a cloak that covered her face. She went to the Lingguang temple alone. The Lingguang temple's little monk blocked her way. Benefactor, the abbot is not seeing any guests today. The woman put her hands together and bowed. I am here to pay respects to an old friend. The little monk returned the bow. Benefactor, who are you paying respects to? The woman was silent for a while. Jingchen. The little monk was surprised. He looked at the woman for a while and chanted Umitba. So you are an old friend of young Master Jingchen. Benefactor, please follow me. The little monk led the woman to the back of the mountain. As they walked, he said, the abbot will recite scriptures for young Master Jingchen every year at this time. When Benefactor arrives, do not disturb the abbot. At the back of the mountain, the little monk pointed to a bamboo forest in front. Just pass through the bamboo forest. Benefactor, please go ahead. The woman followed the little monk's instructions, and passed through the bamboo forest. She saw an open space and a tombstone. Beside the tombstone were 2 praying mats. There was already a person sitting on one of them. It was the abbot of the Lingguang temple. The woman slowly walked closer. The words on the tombstone became clearer. Grave of young Master Jingchen. There were only these words on the tombstone. The woman stood quietly and stared at the tombstone. It was as if she wanted to see something from the words. Miss, Jingchen hopes that you will forget it. Why did you come back? The abbot beside her suddenly spoke. The woman slowly shifted her gaze to the abbot. Her tone did not fluctuate. You know me? The abbot stood up from the praying mat and bowed to the woman. Miss, it is better to let go of the knot in your heart. I will definitely avenge him. The host shook his head and turned to leave the bamboo forest. Lu Ziyan squatted down and reached out to touch the tombstone. She traced the words word by word. I'm the one who should be apologizing. That incident back then was directed at me. You were the victim. But I treated you like that. I'm sorry. Lu Ziyan spoke intermittently for a while. In the end, she took out a dagger and carved a few small words in the corner. After staring at the tombstone for a while, she resolutely left. After she left, the abbot came over from another direction. Looking at the words carved on the tombstone, he sighed and shook his head. In the tomb of Prince Clear Dust, his wife Lu Ziyan stood. Chu Luo had been indulging in debauchery all these years. One woman after another entered the residence. Recently, a woman had come to the prince's residence. It was said that Chu Luo doted on her a lot. The people in the residence were extremely envious of this. Lu Ziyan didn't feel anything about it. She looked at the person beside her, and a mocking smile appeared on her face. That face was completely different from before, but there seemed to be some similarities between the differences. She touched the dagger hidden inside, and waited for an opportunity to stab the person beside her in the back when he turned around. However, Chu Luo was vigilant. When the dagger stabbed over, she avoided the important parts, and the dagger pierced into his shoulder. He rolled off the bed and stared at the person on the bed with a dark gaze. Who are you? Lu Ziyan didn't waste any time. She jumped off the bed and went straight for Chu Luo. The dagger in her hand stabbed at him again. Someone. Chu Luo grabbed Lu Ziyan's hand and shouted outside. King Luo, don't waste your energy. After tonight, the Luo Palace will no longer exist in this world. Chu Luo's expression changed. What do you mean? King Luo, do you really not remember who I am? Lu Ziyan stared into Chu Luo's eyes. Lu Ziyan, Chu Luo said without hesitation. Lu Ziyan sneered. It's rare for you to remember King Luo. She bent her knee and pushed the King Luo's abdomen. While he was in pain, she stabbed the dagger into his chest. Chu Luo froze on the spot. She grabbed Lu Ziyan's arm. The veins on the back of her hand bulged and her face turned pale. You didn't expect this, did you? Lu Ziyan pried his hand away. Without support, Chu Luo's body fell to the ground. Lu Ziyan looked down at him. I'm here to avenge Jingchen. Although Chu Luo indulged in debauchery, she had been secretly preparing to rebel. He wasn't afraid of the emperor, but of Prince Rong, who had married into the Crimson Glory Empire. Before Prince Rong left, he had made some arrangements. Chu Luo didn't know what these arrangements were. However, the ministers in the court turned a blind eye to his attempts to rope them in. They never dared to have any disloyalty to the emperor, as if they were being controlled by someone. Without full confidence, he knew that he couldn't act rashly. Once the war started, the Crimson Glory Emperor would definitely send troops to help Prince Rong. He only had one chance. After so many years, he finally knew something. Now that Sima Yong had just ascended the throne and the court was in turmoil again, this was his best opportunity. So Chu Luo decided not to wait. However, before he could start, he fell into the hands of a woman. A fire broke out in the Luo Palace, and almost no one in the residence was spared. Chu Luo also died in that fire. Shi Sheng returned to the system space after spending the rest of his life with Qi Yuan in this world. She glanced at the space and frowned. She looked in the direction of the screen. The system immediately displayed her information. Name, Shi Sheng morality points, minus 390000 health points, 55 points, 76400 mission level, minus mission rating, 0 hidden mission, completed hidden mission reward, 2000 points side mission, failed side mission reward, none item list, Queen's Crown, Ghost King's Heart, Dark Knight, Chill and Blood, Phoenix Tail Feather. Why did my morality points increase? Did she do something good like helping an old granny cross the road? You can think of it as the continuation of the 100-Year Alliance. The 100-Year Alliance benefited the people of the two countries. Compared to what she had done, after offsetting it, there was still a little left. Host, do you need to do a memory check? Shisheng tilted her head. Why are you suddenly asking this? Are you coveting my memory? You think too much. The system detected that when you came back, your emotions were fluctuating. Does the host need to do a memory check? Shisheng. Speaking of this, Shisheng became angry. She pulled out her sword and exploded. Call your master out. I want a duel with him. What does it have to do with my master? Isn't it because of Feng Xi? Bullsh *T. Feng Xi won't run away. Why would I be emotional? Her emotions fluctuated greatly because at the last moment, her authority had been revoked again. The system's master had changed again. The system realized in hindsight and suddenly became complacent. Master is not someone you can meet whenever you want. Do you want to enter the next world? Initializing transmission. The system was very smug after regaining its sovereignty. Holy shit. But face, just you wait. I'll make you pay. Asterisk the 35th world ended. There was also Qi Yuan's side story 233333. Ha ha ha. This time I filled in the hole. I'm really awesome. Chapter 12:11. In the narrow iron cage, the little boy's clothes were dirty and messy, but he didn't make a sound as he looked at the people in the distance. His face was expressionless, so cold that he didn't seem like a child. In the main hall, a woman was being pressed to the ground. She kept begging the man on the main seat, her posture so humble that it seemed like she was going to sink into the dust. But the man didn't budge. The eunuch standing at the side came forward with a wine cup. The woman shook her head in horror. She broke free from the people and ran towards the iron cage. But before she could reach it, she was pressed to the ground. The eunuch grabbed the woman's chin and poured the liquid in the wine cup into her mouth. As the woman struggled, the wine soaked her clothes. She was in a sorry state. She reached out to the little boy, her eyes full of despair. The eunuchs holding her down released her. The woman struggled to crawl to the side of the cage. She grabbed the cage with a pale face. Blood kept flowing out of the corner of her mouth. She squeezed out a few words with difficulty. Live. Live. Qi Yuan suddenly opened his eyes. His chest rose and fell quickly. His gaze swept across the dark main hall. He reached out to touch the warm body beside him. His nervous nerves gradually relaxed. He leaned over and pulled her into his arms. He urgently searched for her scent, her breath, and everything about her. Shisheng was in a daze from the kiss. She asked in a muffled voice, "What's wrong?" His response was an even more intense kiss. His actions were a bit rough. Shisheng was no longer sleepy and was forced to toss in bed with him until dawn. Afterwards, Qi Yuan hugged her to sleep. Perhaps because he was tired, he fell into a deep sleep. He returned to that dream again, but this time he didn't feel the same as before. He felt a sense of peace. The woman in his dream fell in front of him. Her eyes were wide open. She died with remaining grievances. He saw the woman being dragged away and placed in a strange position in the middle. There were a few people dressed as Jianghu magicians standing around her. They surrounded the woman and muttered something. After the eunuchs and palace maids left, the man also left. He glanced over with a cold gaze. After that, there was a huge fire. An endless fire. He was curled up in the iron cage. The iron chains on his body became hot as the temperature rose. He heard the sound of his skin cracking. He didn't remember how he left. He only remembered that when he woke up he was already outside the palace. The person who saved him claimed to be his shadow guard. His body was wrapped in bandages, and he could barely walk. During that period of time, he could only spend it in bed. The person who took care of him did not say much. Every day, she changed his dressing and brought him food like a machine. She never told him about the outside world. It wasn't until he got better that someone started teaching him martial arts, studying, and even national affairs. Just like that, he stayed in that place for 5 years. 5 years later, someone from the palace came to take him back to the palace. He was very familiar with the palace, but when he entered the palace, he realized that these people no longer called him the sixth prince, but the third prince. The third prince, who had been praised as a genius since he was young, was the favorite of the emperor, and was intended to be the crown prince. Perhaps they knew that he wouldn't say much. Even in such a situation, his shadow guards didn't tell him in advance. It wasn't until he settled down in the palace that he knew that a year ago, the third prince was suffering from a chronic illness, and was sent away for treatment. The third prince had already died. Only then did he have the chance to replace the third prince and enter the palace. But he understood that all of this was arranged by them. His appearance was ruined in that fire, and the third prince's appearance was also ruined because of his illness. There weren't so many coincidences. It was all arranged by them. Why did you do this? For the first time, he took the initiative to ask the person who took care of him. That person was stunned and slowly knelt down. Your Highness, you have a blood feud on your shoulders. Your mission is to take revenge. Where's the third prince? He's dead. How did he die? He died of illness. The shadow guard answered as if he had been trained. He didn't believe it. Since then, he seemed to have fallen into a huge conspiracy. The people around him gradually increased. He had to follow what they said, imitating the third prince's temperament and habits. If he didn't do it well, it would quickly reach the shadow guards. At night, he would be brainwashed by the shadow guards. They would talk about how his mother was framed and how the outsiders were killed. His mother was framed by the third prince's mother. The emperor mistakenly believed the slanderous words of the Taoist priest, saying that his mother was the reincarnation of a fox demon. He would overthrow his dynasty. What the emperor could not tolerate the most was this kind of thing happening. That was why there was that big fire. Even his mother's family was not spared. Their entire family was exterminated. At first he was very angry, but after hearing more he wasn't so angry. These people seemed to be deliberately angering him, deliberately planting the seed of hatred in his heart. They wanted to make him a chess piece that they could manipulate. There were people watching him everywhere, so he had to be careful. He didn't know what kind of power was behind these people, but he believed that he would find out sooner or later. Life in the palace was boring, but he was walking on thin ice all day. Every day, he had to deal with those people who were watching him, avoid their surveillance, and build his own power. He didn't want to be controlled by them. He had endured for many years, and finally, there was a coup in Xiqian. The people outside didn't know what happened, but he knew. The people who manipulated him launched the coup that day, but they missed the Shan family. The Shan family was loyal to the royal family. They would be loyal to whoever was the emperor. They also missed him. At that time, he had already used them to build his own power. His mother's death was planned by this group of people. He had found out clearly in the past few years. The coup failed, and everyone present was killed. The emperor thought that he had saved the emperor and pardoned him for the crime of replacing the third prince, but he didn't restore his identity as the sixth prince. For the emperor, the sixth prince was dead and had become a thing of the past. He was still the third prince. After the Xiqian incident, he still couldn't let down his guard. He knew that those people's power hadn't been completely removed. They were hiding, waiting for an opportunity. And in the Xiqian incident, his martial arts were destroyed. From then on, he could only be an ordinary person, or even worse than an ordinary person. Perhaps it was because he was no longer suppressed by martial arts. His inner ruthlessness began to show. Everyone thought that the emperor regretted listening to the slanderous words, so when he was critically ill, the next emperor fell on him. But he knew that wasn't the case. At that time, the emperor wanted to kill him, but he used a trick to prevent him from saying the rest. He only had time to say his name, so the minister next to him wrote his name on the imperial edict. After ascending the throne, he didn't have to be someone else. Those who looked on coldly and didn't help him in the past all deserved to die. And those who were hiding in the dark deserved to die even more. Qi Yuan hugged the person in his arms tightly. Now that everything was settled, he had the best thing in the world. He used all the misfortune in this life in exchange for his luckiest girl. Qi Yuan. Chapter 12:12. Everyone knew that Gulan and Yi Chen had an unspeakable relationship. Asterisk, tick-tock, tick-tock. The ticking sound of the clock kept ringing in Shisheng's ears. She felt a headache, as if her head had been hit by someone. Tick-tock. Tick-tock. Shisheng found that when she opened her eyes, it was still dark. The bindings on her eyes told her that she was tied up by someone. There was only the ticking sound in her ears. There was no one, and the annoying sound of cicadas could be heard further away. Her body was tied up, so she should be sitting down. It was very hot. She could feel that her body was covered in sweat. It was so hot and there was the sound of cicadas. It must be the hottest day of summer. There was a faint smell of blood in the hot air. She wondered whose blood it was. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The sound annoyed Shisheng. She summoned the iron sword and cut the ropes on her body. Without the bindings, she tore off the bindings on her eyes. Her eyes lit up. Perhaps it was because she had not seen light for a long time. Her eyes were stinging. It took her a while to adjust. She was in a small, dirty room with nothing but a window. The window was so high that an adult man had to stand on his toes to reach it. Shisheng turned her gaze to the ticking sound. It was actually coming from her body. Time bomb, time left, 20 minutes. Shisheng. Damn, this time I've become a human bomb. Buttface and the system master, those two little bitches, are really powerful. Calm down. There will be a time to kill them. But what was the original owner wearing? She was wearing a small floral skirt covered in mud. She was only wearing a red leather shoe, and the other foot was bare and covered in mud. Shisheng was silent. Let's deal with the bomb first. How do I defuse the bomb? Shisheng knew how to defuse all kinds of high-tech things, but this kind of old-fashioned thing, she really didn't know how to defuse it. Well, there was nothing to defuse. It was just two strings. If you cut it right, it would live. If you cut it wrong, it would explode. It was simple and crude. Buttface, which one do you choose? I chose, but you don't believe me. The host never believed in me. What's the use of choosing? I believe you, Shisheng suddenly said resolutely. This was related to her life. Unless Buttface wanted her to explode back, he wouldn't allow her to explode back. However, according to the system settings, he wouldn't allow her to explode back. Therefore, he would definitely choose the right one. Blue. Without hesitation, Shisheng ordered the iron sword to cut the blue. The blue line was cut, and the ticking stopped. Shisheng defused the bomb and opened the window to look outside. It was a very old house, and the tallest one was only 3 stories high. Shisheng looked at his feet. They were so king dirty, but there was nowhere to wash them, so he could only endure it. She looked at the closed door and tried to pull it open, but to no avail. At this moment, Shisheng had a headache. Irritated, he slashed the door with his sword. There was another room on the outside, but it was wider than the inside. There was almost no furniture, only a shabby table. There was also a woman tied up in the middle of the room. She was wearing an army green shirt, the fabric of which was probably the worst. There were pimples everywhere. The woman was unconscious. Her head was lowered, and he couldn't see what she looked like. Shisheng glanced at the bomb tied to her body. He walked around her, found some water, and washed himself. He took a clean set of sportswear from the space and changed into it. Then he left the room. There was no one guarding here, so Shisheng left easily. She was now on the 2nd floor. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and there was no one around. However, the decorations of the buildings nearby gave Shisheng a bad feeling. The world she came to was probably in the 70s or 80s. The novels written in this era were either reborn into a military marriage, or the type that transformed into an ugly girl and became rich, or the type that went back to when they were young, awakened their supernatural abilities, discovered antiques, and reached the peak of their lives. Of course, these were only the 2 types that were written more often. As for what kind of things they were They would only know after they received the plot. Shisheng walked through the alley, ready to find a clean place to receive the plot. Voila! Shisheng looked at the flower pot in front of him. It almost hit I. How rude. How dare you? You have the guts to hook up with other women outside. Why did you come back to this house? I served you at home, fed you, and gave birth to a son for you. I gave you all of my youth. Now that you have some money, you have a mistress outside. Why are you so loud? Oh, you're so embarrassed. I'm going to let all the neighbors see what kind of person you are. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't be where you are today. You ungrateful dog. Voila! A few more flower pots fell. Shisheng retreated silently. The quarrel upstairs was probably about the mistress getting in the way and being discovered by the legal wife. However, this had nothing to do with her almost being hit. Shisheng retreated a little. He was about to argue with the two above when he suddenly saw something from the corner of his eye. An old military car was driving in. The car stopped, and a few men in military uniforms got out. They were all tall and had an extraordinary aura. One of them was the most eye-catching. It wasn't because he was handsome, but because he was eye-catching. This was probably the so-called male protagonist's halo. I saw you in the crowd and fell in love with you at first sight. Damn it, if you didn't have the protagonist's halo, you wouldn't be able to see me. Do you think your eyes are X-ray? Do you think they can scan you? Shisheng calculated the time. It had been about 5 minutes since she came out. She had been delayed for a while, and there were at most 10 minutes left before the explosion. These people were probably here to save her. Or that woman. They definitely weren't here to save her. She was just cannon fodder. Shisheng didn't continue looking. She turned her head and looked up. She shouted at the top of her voice, "The quarreling upstairs, please be careful. You almost hit I. Do you believe that I won't blame you if something happens? I will blame you." Perhaps Shisheng's last sentence was effective. The quarreling upstairs stopped at the same time. They leaned on the balcony and looked down. Shisheng saw a young lady dressed in a novel outfit. The fabric of the outfit was better than the ones they had seen in the market. Women were always jealous when they saw someone prettier than them, especially this woman who had just been cheated on. She immediately raised her voice. "It didn't hit me, did it? Why are you shouting?" The man pulled the woman. "What are you doing? Didn't you see what she was wearing? The material of her clothes is obviously from a rich family." "Oh, you're so bad. You've been out for a few days, and you know you can't mess with her just by looking at the material of her clothes. I think you're not looking at her clothes, you're looking inside." The woman became more and more sarcastic. She even attacked Shisheng. You want a military marriage? Anyway, I don't know what I wrote. You can just read it. Don't find fault with me. I've never read this kind of novel. If there's anything wrong with it, just treat it as a parallel universe. I made it up. I refuse to find fault with you. I refuse to find fault with you. I refuse to find fault with you. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.